Is anybody on?
We've got Randy Heinzen and we have Dave McClure.
All
There we
right.
go.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
good morning.
Good morning.
Not good afternoon. Yet.
The day is young.
Yeah.
So just to preface this meeting with, Kayenta has been really special this week. And it is being held up in a closing role that Pam has been working diligently to try and get that to process successfully. And it's been 2 days now and it's still not. She's working with Kayenta.
Yay, Kayenta.
Yeah, Kayenta, which means we can't get.
Are we filming a
accurate numbers.
Kayenta commercial right now? Is that what we're doing?
I am standing up here
Oh, yeah, we're ready to
pitching
make
the
it.
let's get rid of Kayenta and get going with that.
As soon as I'm presented with something.
Yeah, let's go.
So with that, I did have already some numbers from 2020, so I was able to come up with a couple scenarios, at least pulling revenues, actual revenues and actual expenditures of 2020, and coming up with a variance there. Of course, that's not a complete picture because I'm not able to pull accurate fund balances to really dive into that. So with the scenario 1, 2020 revenues came in at 49 million-ish. I reduced COVID funding, the CRF funding out of that for the net revenue of 48 million. Our expenses were 50 million. So the shortfall would be 2.3. That percentage would be a 5% cut just to get to that. That doesn't include any COLAs.
Just so I've got it in my head. So the 2020 expenses, do those include any COVID related expenses? So if we backed out the revenue part, are we backing out the expense part?
I did not back out the expense part because I was not.
You would know, I don't know how we would.
Right, other than
do that.
stuff we bought, PPE and stuff like that,
It really
a lot of
was,
it would have been normal expense.
it wasn't, yeah.
Yeah.
Over $1 million of it was sheriff payroll, so I don't know
Yeah,
that
it's a
it's
normal-
significant
Right, okay.
number. to back.
Union and sheriff payroll.
That
We were able to recover sheriff's
Oh, got
payroll,
it, got it. Because of COVID.
Right,
because of COVID.
which is an
Public safety.
ongoing expense.
Yeah.
Right.
So the
We
other
didn't
expenses,
add,
not really significant, I don't think.
Okay.
And you didn't back out any of the other COVID grants, like the public health ones?
No.
or any of those?
No.
It was
Just that 1.682.
And one thing Jen and I talked about is, this number is fluid. Everybody will have a little different opinion on some of these numbers because
Yeah.
there's so many pieces and, and so this, will we ever come up with an exact number that everybody agrees to? It's just, there's so many
Right.
pieces on both sides that it's.
well, we rarely agree on everything anyways.
Yeah.
so we
I
have
think this
trouble-
is about
We
as
have trouble
basic.
choosing where we're having lunch today. so.
This is about as basic as you can get, taking the revenues
Yeah.
and the expenditures. And so scenario 2, because of COVID creating that shortfall in the landfill revenue, I tossed in there what I would have anticipated the landfill to come in at 9.5. So that additional revenue. So we have the 2020 revenues where we subtracted the CRF funding. We added that $788,000 of that shortfall into that. Compared that with the expenses and we're at 1.57, which is roughly a 3% without COLA's rate study.
How much do you figure COLAs is gonna make a difference in percentage? Is that gonna take it from 3 to 4 or 3 to 5? Or
I don't know. Yeah, that's a
any
good
kind of
question.
a thrown out idea? I'm not holding you to it.
No.
Well, last year was what?
About $500,000 in COLAs and union raises. So how that converted to a percentage would convert to a.
Well, 788 converts to 2% apparently, so.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
couple
Couple percent, yeah, that's
Anything between 1.5 and 2
I
probably.
mean, because we are, a lot of our, we're very labor heavy in our
Right.
expenses because that's a big line item. So
I-
labor costs definitely,
2020, I did do the workup of that, and with wages and benefits, it was almost 20 million
And with the other things we're doing this year, that could be bumped a little higher.
Right, that's what I
So
said,
it
I'm
could-
gonna,
2% might
I'm
be
gonna
a
say
safer.
2 is a safe number and.
We don't want people to phone and think that's
Even with
2%
correct-
COLA, that's a 2% increase in the overall.
Overall
Right.
expense to
Expense.
the county.
That even with the new landfill number you have here and 3%, we're probably still thinking 5 if you're adding COLA into that. Or a part of this and a part of that.
And we started with this, the real simple math that the landfill was budgeted approximately $1 million higher than historically brings in. So you might just assume $1 million right there and then. start working.
Now
Yeah, it's really easy to explain the number.
Now, take into consideration, there's another caveat to all of this. Our expenses came in at 50.6, but our budgeted expenses was 77.6. So going forward, if maintaining a status quo, we would be closer to that 77, but I would have to take into consideration fund balances for that because there are a lot of projects that didn't get done with Public Works due to COVID and shutdowns and all of that.
It's really the general fund, the one that's in trouble.
General, yes,
Yeah, the general fund of all the funds, the general fund. is the one
which we've
that's-
talked about.
Yeah,
The general,
that's the
yeah,
one that's under the most pressure
that
for the last couple
it's gonna need the most correction.
of years.
And we could, back in that analysis I had already given you, there is a fund balance graph in there. And off the top of my head, I could tell you that the general fund was dipping into fund balance for 2020 being shut down the majority of the year, still dipped into fund balance almost 900,000. The prior year it was 1.7. And prior before that was, I think, it was insignificant. It was pennies really, under 100,000 or something like that.
And it's kind of that 1.7 that, Brian, I think December of 2019 made the statement that, you know, we were
Yeah,
headed
we
in
know.
the.
We're headed in the wrong
we're
direction.
Starting to head. in the wrong
Correction, 1.5 in 2019. So. So that's what I was able to gather with not being able to get into Kayenta and run any further detail.
So am I correct in my interpretation that if our biggest problem is in the general fund, our biggest corrections need to be in the general fund? Or are we looking at shifting from over here to over there as well?
Well, I mean, I think that's gonna be a discussion as far as, because there's, you know, as we've said, there's only a couple different ways to, there's either more money and there either has to be more revenue into the general fund or less expense. And more revenue can be, because we're already allocating landfill dollars in, that's a revenue into the general fund. And we can adjust that number that's flowing. I mean, we can do it that way, but that every dollar of that is already allocated. And so that means you can cut over here and move it over here, but then you cut
Well,
over
and as we
here.
know, sometimes other funds get distressed
Right.
because of whatever's going on, and then money's moved around in and out of 125 to cover things. So if something happens somewhere else, that's less that can.
Plus it's unsustainable without, because that's just the bottom line. There's the, you know, as I had said last week, you know, we would not be having, if the, you know, adjusting for inflation, if the landfill was generating 12 million, which was equivalent to 8 million 15 years ago, we would not be having any discussion at all. We would, you know, we're just gonna have to move more money in there. So we're just gonna do that as a percentage and we're good, let's go home. So it was super easy before, but now it's gone up, but it ain't gonna be 12 million anytime in my lifetime. I don't
No.
I don't know they're gonna see 10 million.
Yeah.
sometime.
And the general fund is heavy in the salaries because that's where majority of the departments
Sure.
and the people are. The other funds are specific to certain things, as Jen's
Yeah.
talked about. The general fund covers a massive amount of services and functions and people.
Right.
Well, public safety is right on the general fund.
Right.
Yeah, I no matter how many meetings I have with Republic, I think 9 to 9.5 is.
Right.
And Anything more than that is a pipe dream.
Right. I would say, yeah, for long-term planning, we should never, that
Unless
you know, that is
put in a new
plateaued.
rail
Yeah.
line, you
Yeah.
know, or
And I also
something.
hear, just to put it out on the table, well, gosh, yeah, but the pump storage is coming. Yeah, but when?
And you can't count on
And
it.
other things are coming, yeah, but when? And
You
you
know,
can't.
and I think a lot of people are thinking we're, you know, oh, we're all in favor of solar because we're gonna get money off of that, and it's not enough to cover that. So that's not the point.
No, I would say for myself, for planning purposes, I mean, we will see more revenue into the general property tax from these solar projects, but it's not this kind of, it will maybe cover some of those future
Right.
COLAs and just the ongoing,
Right.
because we have had growth over that 15-year period I was talking about from wind turbines, where that, you know, when you go and look, and that's part of the reason why it's not as bad as it, like it could be a way lot worse as far as because of what's happened with expenses over that period of time, is because the general property tax levy, there is more of it, because in that same period, we got the wind farms and they paid in, and that pretty much covered over that period of time, because the amount of dollars from transfers from the landfill into the general fund was pretty constant for a long time. And that's why. That doesn't mean the expenses weren't, they were being covered from that new stuff coming in, just the status quo stuff coming in from the wind farms. And I think we'll see potentially some of that eventually from solar, but it's not going to fix the systemic problem.
Then you still get into the whole discussion about depreciation and where's that get shifted to.
Exactly.
So
So
same amount of money, but where's it coming from?
So yeah, these future things, for one thing, we don't see it yet, and we have to deal with this now.
Yeah, and I look at the future things the same way you do, is any future things will just be used to cover future COLA and future needs. I don't want to rely on potential future projects to fix what is an issue now.
So this kind of gives us a general plus or minus, but pretty close under different scenarios, what we're faced with, either through bumping up revenues or lowering expense, most likely, if you said before, a little of both, potentially.
Like I said, I think the general public will be fine with the lifting of revenues, as long as we do our due diligence on the cutting of things that could be cut. You know, I'm not in any way, shape, or form talking about employees. I'm talking about extra vehicles, things like that, you know, that we can maybe, you know, nip in the bud a little bit and cut a little bit here and there and remove a little few items from our fleet and lower our insurance premium. And sure, it's budget dust, but it all adds up. And if we show we did our due diligence, I think the public will understand.
So, and as we go through this, if everybody's looking at me, I left my coffee over there. As we go through this, you know, any time we think more, I'll talk slow by myself kind of thing.
Take a break.
Is that, you know, to give further direction to the departments as they're preparing their budgets. I mean, for instance, you know, do you want to bring in a status quo budget and then have those discussions? Do you want them to look for those things ahead of time? I mean, the more I think of your thinking as commissioners, will save them and you time later, unless you don't want them to start making those decisions now or identifying those. Wait till they make their presentations and then have those discussions as they present.
So when is it, and I've had private conversations with a couple of the big, you know, I'm thinking of Public Works, because I think they understand as far as the road program that you know, that there's a target as far as out there with, because again, we've said, you know, about how you know, we're certainly the only county in the state that we actually do a diversion the other direction into the road fund many counties are diverting, they're doing a diversion of road tax into the general fund for this very reason. Because there's two large revenue sources that come in from taxes. It's the general and the road fund. And many counties, to balance their budgets, they've done this for years. We unfortunately have not. I don't support doing that because we already feel like we can't even keep up with maintenance with the revenue that we're
too many roads
to take care of. And I think you're stealing from the future. You're consuming your infrastructure to solve a problem today that is just going to be worse in the future. But one thing I do think that we can start talking about is that the extra dollars that we divert. Not saying, I will not advocate us saying, oh, well, we're going to balance 2021, no more $1 million to the road fund. It's off, that million goes into the general fund. And that there's part of it where it's coming from. It has no impact on the overall budget as far as no negative impact. Because we have planned those projects, we're planning out 6 years, and they planned 6 years out of having that money come in there. Now, I'm not saying we can't make a change for 6 years, but because a lot of that are they're a line on a spreadsheet. No advance work's been done, nothing's been done. But a couple of years out are current, right? And so I can't consider making any changes for at least 2 years. But we could start talking about in the third year out, and I'm not saying diverting all, but we start ratcheting that down. And so maybe 3 years out, instead of $1 million, it's only $500,000.
Right.
And then in the next year, and we scale it down so that we can kind of plan, understanding that basically means the projects on that list, we're not going to add anything new that doesn't already, that doesn't get funding from other sources, which most of it gets funding from other sources. This is just the extra stuff we throw on there to make things happen out there as a way that we are going to have to unfortunately wean ourselves away. And that makes me really sad, because I'm really proud of the fact that we have gotten so much done in the last 20 years around the county in the road, because we were able to have those resources that other folks didn't, that we, in some ways, I felt like we were catching up because we had been poor for so long that our road system was in worse shape than many of our counterparts. And we've kind of caught ourselves up by investing in it. I wish we didn't have, and maybe we won't, but if these things like pump storage and, all this money starts, that you can change, we can change that, but I don't think we can count on that. And we need to start planning. And I know they do a lot of work planning when they come in to present, based on the assumption they're already planning out 6 years for that money. Maybe they need to, maybe don't plan after 3 years out right now.
So so what I'm hearing is that, there's
And I can look and see if they're listing right now.
There's no 1 year fix. There's no 1 year fix, and we can't see out 4 or 5 years in the future. So we've got to make some.
I guess I would say I don't know whether how my teammates want to, like I said, if they present a status quo and then you're adding COLAs in there, that doesn't get us where we're going. So we're either going to have each department person in here and start doing little line item, vetoes. I personally would rather direct the departments to all of them across the board plan for a certain number, and then come before us and champion your cause on how to get that part of that back. If we feel, I want them to already pick where that needs to go versus us having to have that discussion 2 months from now.
Right. What you'll see is some departments the cuts will be people, because they don't have a lot of things. Other departments have things that maybe are discretionary or not.
Right.
So you'll see how that affects different departments.
Yes, but I think that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, because they can, I'm fine with, maybe we do, because I don't think I don't think there's any way to do this sustainably that doesn't have both some new revenue, but also some
Oh, I agree.
reductions.
But I think you'll see, to your point.
Right.
you'll
So
see
why don't
that-
we just start out, so if it's,
It might
and
be
maybe,
people, but they can come forward and say,
Say-
look, if I lose this
Exactly.
person, I can't do this.
That might be-
if I gotta
We're
cut
gonna say,
2%,
we get
that's,
it.
I gotta take a price.
You know,
And then they can make an argument for the impact of
Right.
that, and you're
right.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Because I don't know that we have people to lose and still provide the services that we do have. But that would also be an education factor, I guess I would say for us, that, hey, I can come up with 2% over here, but you want more than 2%, it's a person.
And then what
okay,
doesn't
you're
get done if that
2%.
person's
Yeah,
not
right,
there?
right.
What's the impact of services?
But that way it's kind of fair across the board for every department to plan ahead for this. And then they can argue their case, and we're gonna have to make.
So I don't want to get in the weeds. I mean, I don't want to get in the weeds. So are you saying that you want the budgets presented, because they're working on them now, entered into the system under that scenario, or do you want them to bring that?
I would
To the
prefer they
table.
got ahead of it now.
Because I think because I think our call for budgets, we said, didn't you say
Status quo.
a status quo?
Yeah,
But I think we can give them if we, and whatever that is, the board needs, because I think that's a good idea. Come prepared, and whether it's 2% or 3%, we can figure that out. But you gotta have a scenario, what's that look like? And don't come with the only, because we've done this before, where I can't do it. I can't do it, that will mean I might as well burn my department down and, kill everybody and send everybody home. And if that's the only way I can do it, that's not a productive discussion. And I know it's hard because.
Or threats, don't come forward with threats.
Right.
I
This
just-
is
don't
what's gonna
respond
happen.
I was told a long time ago in county government, and I hope it translates well here too, is we're not broke. This county
No.
is not broke. It's how we choose to spend the money, how you
Right.
choose to spend.
No, we have lots of resources. We just
So,
have
yeah,
to choose.
people shouldn't think the county's broke. It's
No.
just, how are you gonna?
What
allocate
services do we want to
Right.
cut?
So it's a different message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's departments in the public.
So yeah, it just kind of comes down to whether we're giving those departments 5%, we give them 3%.
Right.
I mean, knowing, see, I would personally say 5, knowing some of them ain't gonna get past 2.
I always like to tell the truth. I
That's
don't,
true.
I don't expect, looking at.
I don't
things,
expect 5, so.
I don't expect 5. I don't think that's practical. I think we will see significant service impacts.
Oh, I think some could be 5.
Well,
I think some.
I know, unfortunately, you have to put it out across the board. I think some departments could handle more than others. They can.
Maybe that'll be the.
And
end
right now,
result.
there's a collective.
And that could be the end result when
We can give them
departments,
a range.
right, when
That's what
departments,
I said.
Look
If,
at 2 to 5.
Yeah.
Here's what we're looking at, 2 to 5.
Yeah, we certainly don't need more than 5, but we
Right, I
don't
would
need
say-
less than 2.
maybe
Anybody
3 to
can do
5,
Yeah,
because
3 to 5 would
3
be,
to 5.
3 to 5
You're
is,
gonna have colas that
So do
end
we
up
think
Probably
jacking
not,
that
do
but-
you think departments are actually gonna do 5 if the range is 3 to 5?
But if
Well, that's
you
my
tell them
point,
that
that's-
here's the range,
because like I
They're
said,
more likely to
okay,
at
some
least get
departments
to the
can
2.
do 5 and others can't do 2.
So the end result may not be
So-
across the board even.
Right,
in the end,
no.
But it may
No, I don't
start
think it
that
will
way.
be.
Right.
I don't
No,
believe
I
it
don't
across
believe
the
it
board.
before it will be.
Gotcha.
'Cause I
Well,
don't-
it's a starting point for discussion.
But I don't want to single-handedly go, okay, you do 5 and you do 2 and you can only do 1 and you don't need to do any. And that's not
Right.
how I want to start this discussion.
and it may be easier for some departments than we think if people have been building in a 2% cushion.
Yeah,
Right, there's your 2%.
Right, and that's why I would like to shoot for a little higher number, knowing I'm not going to more than like necessarily take that number.
But we need actual savings, because we already, whether we officially or don't, we already budget the unspent, the cushion. But the reality is if our fund balance, and that's why we have been able to adopt budgets that on paper were out of balance, meaning that we were going to burn fund balance and we were comfortable with it because we knew in actuality when the numbers were all in, we didn't, because 2%, 3% was left over. And so if we adopted a budget that was out of balance by 3%, but starting in 19, we adopted, they were out further and we wanted to see what was going to happen. And we know the cash went down. That means we actually were actually spending fund balance. We can't do that. And so if they think they're going to do it, because yeah, that's the automatic, well, because I get that for people. I returned $800,000 last year.
Yeah.
Can I have that? Just take mine out of that. I gave you back
Had
last
they
year.
not done that, we'd have been in worse shape
Sure.
a lot sooner.
Yes, thank you
You
for
spent everything you
returning
budgeted,
that, but we, on January 1 or December 31st, everything swept. It's all gone and we start over. It all goes
Back into the one.
back into the
Right.
pile and then we start
And that's why I
handing it
took
up.
the actual numbers, not the budget numbers.
Exactly.
So
The
making-
actual expenses.
So making the implicit explicit, you also want the departments to come prepared to discuss the impacts of any cuts that they propose.
And
for
also
the budget.
prepared to discuss that I might take a pen and line item and single something out like extra vehicles or.
Right.
But I would prefer we send them with an actual number, not a 3 to 5, because that's gonna mean 3 to everybody. If it's 3, just say 3. If you want 4, say 4.
Right.
Well, and you could say 3 of your actual expenses.
Right. Not
Not
your
your
budget,
budget.
your actual expenses. That I would be comfortable with
Yeah.
that. Because that's what we need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a legitimate. Yeah, because if some people look at, they're like, well, I'm underspent by 3 or 5%. I've already made my goal. It's like, no.
Folks gonna start
I know.
seeing it
Yeah, yeah.
any minute.
Did you
Yeah.
see my face drop out? I'm like, wait, words come back, come back.
Yeah,
Because to Heather's point, and
I didn't
I
see
don't know, I don't,
But then we need a future plan that there isn't a whole lot of cushion left because everybody's.
like we've already,
Yeah.
because if you
Everybody
spend
gonna burn their
everything,
cushion
that's
first,
right.
so we're gonna have to prepare our budget thinking that there isn't
if
cushion.
you spend 100% what you budget, I mean, you always hope something comes back. So, that's a different.
yeah, I'm comfortable with that 3%
Of actual.
of your actual.
Yep, we're not gonna get any Christmas cards this year.
Because I would rather them line item. They know where the pork is. They know where the pork is in their budget. They do.
And to clarify, are we talking, is this a discussion, are we only talking about the general fund or are we talking across the whole budget?
I'm saying every department, every elected. Fair to everybody.
Right now,
I'm gonna fight for
I could
fair.
hear the general fund people like, gee, thanks, general fund.
Yeah.
We're all in this together.
But
It's all the same money.
But
It's the
we
same
also
money.
Advise them to try not to add people in that 3%.
Focus on not people.
Focus on not
I
people.
mean, it's all really one big bucket of money.
Right.
And you allocate it to funds and general fund and 125, and we move money around and that, the funds also, when they get short, come to the commissioners looking for
Sure.
assistance, and that can be at the
Oh,
expense.
yeah, we've diverted $1 or $2.
So, I mean, it's not unfair, I think, what you're discussing for presentation purposes. So, and to Heather's point, and I would never see anybody does this intentionally, but if you build, because you don't know what, sometimes when you build a budget, you don't have actual equipment repaired. You don't know if something's gonna break, so you just tend to put the same amount of money in there. But if there's $1,000 cushion in every department just because of the unknown, and that does exist in some cases, I mean, those add up, and as opposed to people, sometimes those are easier to discuss. And then if something breaks, unfortunately, I may have to come to you and say, supplemental budget, we, narrowed that down, and then we did have the worst case scenario,
But I also know that because one of the things that I look at when when we're going through the budgets, and it's hard because it is the line item where it's, it's a lot of stuff. And there it is. And
Yeah.
I'm missing mine, but I
I
will
think it's
get,
that one.
oh, it's that one? Oh, okay.
Here's your gift.
Like it.
Yeah, I know, you don't even have a curl.
Here's your gift.
Here's your, yeah, thank you.
can have it back.
Is that you look at the actual, budget over actual previous years too, because you go back, it's like, why are you putting 10,000 in there when you've never spent more than $1,500 for the last 4 years?
And in a budget,
Because, and what happens though, and this, I don't mean this to throw rocks, is that later in, because we don't, short of moving money into wages, departments have all kinds of flexibility to move things between lines. And I always say, put real numbers in those real lines, not, I know I'm really going to spend it over here and I'm going to put it here. But what happens is there is some discretionary spending that happens later in the budget because they're like, oh, gee, I got this money here and I've got this. And there are, and I'm not saying we're buying stuff that's not necessary or, but it's really easy to justify when you don't have to come in and ask for more money. Because we get that. People come in and they say, I want to get this. I don't need any additional budget. What they're not saying is the reason I don't need any additional budget is because I put 10,000 in this line and I've never spent more than 1,500. I've actually spent it on this other stuff. And it would be easier in the past is because generally I don't care. It's like, as long as you are under budget and you think it's an important thing to go do it. And we may have to watch in that way, getting those lines tuned up makes it so we don't have to be watching every single thing.
Well, there's safety
"Oh, I
valves.
need you to."
The safety valve is the supplemental budget process, which is for the emergencies and the unknown. So if a department cuts too deep in something, that's an essential critical service, they have the ability at least 3 times a year to come back to you and say, is it as important enough? Is it so important to you that you would move money out of reserves to cover this? So there is a safety net for departments at least 3 times a year. If something was cut too deep in, it's going to have an impact that you're not willing to accept. So it gives you and the departments additional.
Well, and the departments are gonna have to, I guess I would say, understand that what they've been used to budget updates for the last 8 years are now different because there's 2 new commissioners. And I don't know how previous boards did it, but they're gonna need to answer questions that I'm gonna say, okay, line item number 47, what all is in that? Right. You know, I want details of what's in that.
And I
so
think
they better.
I think today what they may have learned is I think the general fund departments were hearing that, but I'm sure other folks are going to prepare the same. I don't think people maybe realize across the board, you want that kind of detail for the whole budget, even though that fund may not be in distress, just as
Well, mostly because I don't think there's a single fund that we don't put dollars into.
Right.
And so,
And with an unsustainable budget.
right. And why am I putting money, nobody's.
And we have a duty to the citizens out there that we look over the entire budget and every taxpayer dollar. And on at least the first year, I'm sure my new seatmate over there is going to be the same way. He's going to be held accountable for every dollar. So he wants to see every dollar. Now, once we get through the first year and go, okay, I took account for those. Next year, there's less scrutiny.
and I think that would happen even if there wasn't a budget issue that first year with new commissioners.
Yeah, you will understand it.
So they need to come forward understanding that we're going to have more scrutiny. So.
Brenda, Heather, anyone?
No. I'm having,
Oh,
my elections person is going to start tomorrow.
Hey, Brenda, I'm sorry, I'm gonna
No,
change
you're
the subject because I've been meaning to ask and I keep
Yeah.
forgetting. When is the last day to declare write-in candidacy?
I think it's the day before the election.
Day before August 4th.
But there's a cutoff to where you have to pay versus not having.
Yeah, you'll have to pay. It's not, so if it's a position that has a salary, then you will have to pay the filing fee.
Right.
So, and if it's a position that doesn't have a filing fee, I think they have a nominal fee. Yeah, it is 10 or 20, $30 somewhere in there. They change the amount, so it's 25, you said? Yeah, I don't want to be committed to
Right, yeah, no, that's
the amount.
right.
But normally, if you don't have a salary attached to your position, it's free to file. But when you wait and do it as a write-in that late, there is a fee.
But that is the day before.
I believe so, yes. If it's different, I'll let you know as soon as I get out of here.
Listening to your budget discussion, I think that this is going to be a really wonderful learning tool, not only for new commissioners, but for department heads. Because I think a lot of the different department directors and their staff that do budgets don't always understand.
Right.
And so I think this is going to be wonderful.
And I think that's one more reason why we allot more time for each one, because it's going to be more in-depth, more thorough, more.
And maybe a bigger room. I mean, put potentially. This room will be full, I suspect, with
We
staff.
might be
and-
over in
Maybe
the new building
bulletproof
by
glass,
then.
maybe
Yeah.
we do it.
By the end
We
of this
could,
meeting.
by the
Yeah.
end, we could be across
Yeah.
the street, so we'll have more space.
But to Lee's point, your department and the commissioner's department, auditors, treasurers, our department, we look every day across the organization. Many departments you hire to be experts in their department, and that's their focus, and they understand the partnerships. But for everybody to see how the 27 different functions work together and independently is a learning process.
And I understand that some departments may feel they can't cut a single dollar without travesty. That's fine. Give it to me anyway. Show me the travesty.
I would also suggest if a department, and this applies to my three, if we bring something saying, well, there's a mandate, we have a state mandate or federal mandate to do that, and you can't cut that, well, what's the punishment? What's the downside not doing it? Is it a slap on the hand? Is it an audit finding? Is it you don't get your road tax? I mean, there's different levels of, don't do that.
Yeah, come
It'd be
ready
nice
to
to know
explain.
what those are.
Yeah.
Some of them are just like, well, you shouldn't do it, and others are, you don't want to do it. But saying the word mandate is a pretty broad category.
Prepare the cause and effect for each.
In that statement alone, they're going to be lined up across the hall momentarily.
Yeah, they're already.
Yeah, they're already.
There's still many on, they don't even know the day before.
Oh, they'll find out. But that applies to all of us too. We all have departments. Great.
Should we send a
Brenda.
welfare check over to Dave McClure? Make sure he's okay. Are you okay, Dave?
Yeah, he hasn't tripped over a pile of paper. We love you, Dave.
He's putting sandbags around the building right
He
now.
is, he is.
When they move it, he'll be in it.
He'll be in.
He'll be in it when they move it to the fairgrounds.
He'll be out at the fairgrounds.
So we will then revise the direction to the departments. And I don't know if that's Brenda and Jen or
the
Brenda,
other
Heather,
thing-
Brenda, all of us, or how.
Probably be Jen.
The other thing. I
Oh,
want-
We're thinking about it.
I can't
There's-
have you do it, but the initial
String
letter
me
is
up right
gone
now.
out.
Yeah, no,
So, I mean, I have no problem doing it, but I don't want to step
Well, we
on
can do it
toes
just
in
in
the
one.
process.
We'll do it together, like we
Okay,
did the first.
perfect.
And we'll
Yep.
we'll
We
be
together
direct.
let
Other
handle
thing
it.
I want to see from each department, which I've kind of hinted about it, mentioned it, and it's low hanging fruit, is I want a VR and R from each one of them with a detail on their vehicle, how many vehicles the board has initially given their department to have for their fleet. Boom, 5, but they have 7 because they kept these 2 instead of decommissioning them. All I want to discuss
I
all
think
of
the
that.
good news there,
as well.
Commissioner, is that that's a learning experience for at least the 3 of us, because it was done in the past by somebody else. And there's not a lot of documentation how it was done
Yep. It was
internally. I mean, not with the departments, but how it was. So it's a
The
learning
internal
process.
process of how it's done, it's just like
Right.
preparing the.
It was done in a,
budget.
it was done in a separate database that we actually don't have a license for. And although I know how to operate in that database, it's not one I'm comfortable with. It's not my favorite. And there wasn't a lot of instruction on how to deal with that either.
So
So
you're gonna have to pull from that and put it, make it
IT
your
is,
own.
IT has already data dumped that into a raw Excel.
Because we're
file
gonna have
for
to
me.
discuss that as 10-year, 100,000 miles as cars have gotten better.
So the good news is we're learning as well how that's put together. So
And the department heads and directors have been
Right, and-
helpful and,
Yeah, and that's one of those tools I think the board will have as far as to if we, as vehicles have gotten better, do we, because some departments have voluntarily said, I'm scheduled for one, I don't really need it. So I'll wait another year, and then there's no rental fee then, so that saves their budget, because they're not, you don't need to put any more money aside for a vehicle that you're not buying. And so it helps. But if we could across the board really look at what is the state of our fleet? Because it is, you want to have decent stuff that's out there. And then it's always that kind of break point of when maintenance starts, you're not actually saving any money. But I think we're in good shape right now.
Same to deal, to deal, is that a word?
It is now.
Yeah.
You heard me
On the
speak,
record, being
there's a reason
recorded.
They call me Bumble.
not before I present my budget, no way.
Yes. Same deal, I just because a vehicle has 100,000 miles on it doesn't necessarily mean it needs replaced. Show me the receipts on how much it's breaking. It's just not automatic. Oh, we took the car in the shop because the, valve cover was leaking. Oh, well, let's try another $40,000 vehicle.
It would be nice to have some level, and I know Public Works does it, the sheriff's does it. So it's not a blanket statement, some level of fleet management.
I honestly.
If a
I
department
wish-
has a vehicle they use to go to trainings, and another department goes to training at a different time of year, can they both be the same? Is there
I
a
would
pool
like,
vehicle?
and that's part of our future discussion that I haven't brought up. I would like us to have an actual fleet of these excess or overflow vehicles.
Then I
that
can write a
everybody
report to
draw
you saying,
on.
here's the maintenance cost of this fleet of vehicles, and this one's on the shop 7 times, and this one isn't, this one keeps me tire. I mean, just buying tires alone for all these, snow tires.
Right, snow tires, oil
Okay.
As I
changes.
said, even if we only have ever
Insurance.
given them 5 vehicles, but they now have 7, there's an expense to number 6 and number 7 via tires and gas and insurance and in breakdowns and whatever. So essentially you've grown your fleet, even though it's not VR&R.
I keep reminding one department that one of their cars has always got a flat tire, so I don't think it gets moved very often. But like, if you really want it, you might want to pump that tire up. So that's another thing, I mean, it's simpler said than done to have fleet management, but you can't have the general fund departments, I guess. Sheriff's Department, I think they handle theirs pretty well, and you do want those to be available when it's time to go, because even idling all the time could put stress on some cars.
I get that.
But others that are just.
Still wanna see it.
generally- No, I understand. So maybe that's something we can move towards. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to do that and software to do that and help track that cost.
And I think that the individuals are no longer employed at the county, but there were previously individuals who were using county rigs for not necessarily county purposes, so that might be.
Well, is that another thing? Because if that is significantly, is that actually still happening? And that is something we need to tighten up, because that is,
Well,
Or
one
tax
way,
it as a
one,
fringe
I was gonna
benefit.
say,
Or
one
tax it
way
as a
we can
fringe
do
benefit.
it is many counties, and I haven't had the word, whatever, in my office to get it done, is a taxable fringe benefit. So say, if I was going to go, just a hypothetical, I was talking about this and I opted not to because it's not a good practice if I'm gonna not prove it in my office. They don't condone it. I'm going to Clarkston, but I live in Lyle. So I'm gonna take the county car home. Well, that's a taxable fringe, but we're not doing that right now. And then go to Clarkston. No, I left early, came here, got the car, and instead of just zipping down 84, I went up and over and around. I did not take the car home. If there's taxable fringe, some of those extra miles and expenses and wear and tear on the vehicle might be reduced.
And the IRS has clear, you get commuter tax, you can have, you take the vehicle all the time tax. And
It's supposed to be done, and I mean, Shelby was running all the time, and so hopefully if I get the position filled, we'll be able to
Well,
do that.
I just, in a way, I know of a couple that I can just think of off the top of my head, people that have a car that I'm like, why the hell do they have a car?
And then
I
generally
mean,
need to be
commissioners
marked.
don't have a car, we have mileage. It would be way cheaper to have those people do mileage than for us to actually pay for the car.
And there are people that need them.
Just depends on how far they're taking it.
Some. And then we have a fleet. If we had a fleet that they had to go to Clarkston or whatever, you draw a car, the fleet to go. I'm not saying that everybody who has a car doesn't need a car. I'm saying I see a little bit of extra.
But I'm
We
just,
had some people
Fluff
who were
in there.
regularly going from home to work, home to work, home to work.
they
home
were
to work.
using it as their commuter car.
And
Many
that,
public,
there's a lot of it.
many public
I
Well-
wouldn't say a lot.
many public
Okay.
agencies in Oregon were audited by the IRS for the last 3 years.
Right,
Counties and
and
cities for,
it's
for
something
fringe
that my
benefits.
office needs to get on and do, but with all the extra employees I have, we haven't done it.
and apparently
You should
3%
hire
less.
somebody new. Spencer.
don't get Brenda started.
Yes, it's just, and again, I understand this is a small piece, but if we're gonna be accountable for every dollar we spend of taxpayer money, we have to look at the small pieces.
Well, and I think, to your point earlier, I think before we look at additional revenues, we have to have exhausted every other opportunity, just so we know. So we can articulate that to the voter, because I agree. I think if you can make, my experience here is if you can make your case and you can articulate why, nobody's gonna like it, but they're gonna say, yeah, I get it. I see it. Okay. And, some people, it won't make any difference. We already, I know there's been a run on boiling oil in the county. So, pitchforks and clubs, but, thank God there's, supply chain issues with all of those items. So we should be fine, but
It'll be a nice expensive oil you're boiled in.
right, exactly.
Per
I
barrel.
prefer extra virgin olive oil.
But I think,
It's good for my
since
skin.
we're-
I think there's some places in the county where if the person in charge of let's say the department head, director, elected, whoever's in charge of that office, if they had to use their own money, sure, they want to replace this item or this computer. If they had to spend their own personal money to do it, no, I could get another 2 years out of that. Well, then do it. It's taxpayer money. Don't buy it. Wait 2 years. I think, I don't know. It's just probably should stop before I put foot in mouth.
Well, that's part of why we tightened that travel policy too, was, if you were booking your own travel.
Yeah, would you do this or not? That's right.
Yes, we did tighten that up a lot.
And I think, since we're all here.
Now the breaks are, we haven't been
We all
talking
got
about.
the meetings this morning too, so.
You forgot, I had it for some reason.
It's on it.
I had it for 10 o'clock.
We'll let you-
I had it.
we all know
I
too.
thought it was this.
Well,
We're gonna start sending
It's
memos.
okay. That there will be cases, and the department should be prepared, the public should be prepared, where commissioners are going to add a new position somewhere because it's a critical function. And I mean, that people automatically flare up and say, wait a minute, you're telling me to cut 3% or whatever, and you just added something over here. Well, that is because there's a critical function somewhere else. I mean, the merry-go-round doesn't stop completely and everything grind to a halt while you're making these decisions. There's always something rising to the level of that.
And I hope as the departments, find their 3%, they don't try to take the easy road and like you not having a staff person in a spot and you go, oh, well, that's easy. I'll just remove that staff person I don't already have. If that's a critical function, leave that in there and try to find it somewhere else. And at least make that presentation that that's what I'm looking to see.
We may also want to, and this could easily apply to any of my departments, I'm going to really regret saying this, that not a hiring freeze, but maybe more scrutiny over positions as they become available. Under that scenario, it's easier sometimes just to have a discussion about that.
Attrition.
You know what I mean? I mean, I understand, I appreciate what you said, that's very important, but also we tend to automatically refill positions pretty easily because they're budgeted and we're assuming they're all important, and they are.
That has not always been like that. When we went through this exercise in 2010, then I would say between 2010 and 2012 or 13, it was every time somebody left, you had to really come prepared to, this is why I need to replace them. And let's talk, or is this an opportunity to reorganize and change some of the structure of the department?
Right.
And then we kind of eased up on that.
So I'm not saying they're all positions that are in the budget aren't important, but having those discussions before they fill it might be easier than after it's filled.
Right, and I would agree.
I
Because
can
like I
hear
said, I'm not looking at doing layoffs, but attrition is quite possible, depending
I
on.
can hear Commissioner Anderson
From his airplane.
from afar
Yeah.
saying, efficiency. Sometimes that starts with spending money in order to make money as well, software, those types of things, which, and really diving into each department's procedures and policies and how they handle things. We can't operate in 2021, 2022 with 1980 policies and the software in place, and that
1890 equipment.
and 1890 equipment. So, that could play a huge role and will play a huge role.
Yes, sometimes there is an initial.
We have
investment.
to, I guess I would say, we have to figure out a way, somehow, the departments are all in their own separate world. They might as well be in different buildings around the county. They don't commingle as much as they really should
They will show.
to use
They will.
and share resources instead we're paying two resources. And we've got to commingle better and start cutting out some of that overspend. So I don't know even that you're doing it, you're all in the same building. I don't know that you're going to commingle.
Some better than
Discuss, you know, yeah, if you work together on a regular basis, sure, but are you going to reach out to the building department to see if they have something, you know, it's, we've got to try to put some kind of policy in place that there is some.
One possible place, and this came up yesterday as we're working through the surplus sale piece, is looking at vehicles. You know, I know there's a lot of vehicles that we have that where we have lots of vehicles ever, you know, and I don't think that it's, and again, I'm not proposing, I'm just throwing out ideas, but going back through, does it make sense to have a pool for excess vehicles? So does every department need to have?
That's a good idea.
Exactly what you're saying.
I'm glad you thought of that, Greg.
Well,
Can you run with that?
Now that the treasurer brought it up, yeah, I think that's a great idea.
I'm just saying.
Especially when they're all bad. Well, that was Greg's idea.
That was Greg's idea.
You know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
apologize for being late.
Yeah.
I'll shut up.
Yeah.
But you're right, Nate.
It's good to know that great minds think alike.
Yeah.
Maybe even some level of fleet management.
Yeah, and especially that goes extensively to oil changes and other things.
Yeah, and we could put that under the purview of the treasurer for fleet management. It was his idea.
Yes, ma'am.
So back to staffing, when, in the early years of my term, you know, my tenure here, if it was a grant funded position and the grant funding ran out, they were gone.
Right.
Axed. And that has drastically changed through the years. They've just been absorbed into everyday whatever. So even if the grant funds disappear, the position has existed and stayed.
One thing I've
Well,
done.
sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead. No.
Since I've been here, I've tried to make it perfectly clear to everyone that's got a position that's grant funded, that's my opinion, is when that time is done, if you ain't got any more grant funds, you either come with more funds or the position.
You know, most grants don't even cover the unemployment. So when you do into grant and the employment ends, you're paying into the fund or you're paying into the hour.
For a limited time.
For a limited time, but
Yeah.
still an expense one way or the other that you know, so.
That's just been an observation I had since I
Right.
began my tenure here.
And like you talked about Tuesday, a grant match can eat up a department's budget. So somehow you're supplementing, you know, well, it's only 10%, but how many of those 10% are in your budget or have to come out of somewhere else, you know, to backfill the other expenses they had.
And this kind of sounds like a doom and gloom discussion, but I'm actually very excited because I think it's gonna force this county to come out of the 80s and hit efficiencies that they've never had before. So I think it's gonna end up being.
While we're talking about it, call me a fool or worse. I'd be interested in putting fleet management under administrative services, not the road department, but whatever that looked like underneath.
Would you have to increase your budget to do
No.
that?
Maybe. Efficiencies. But I don't know who else you could assign it to. There may be somebody who makes more sense, like Greg, but.
The treasurer.
You don't want that kind of stuff in the treasurer's.
Yeah, that's right.
That's not.
Anyway, I just put that up.
We would really keep the dollars.
A lot of times we
That's
think
what I'm
it's.
saying.
You can get another season.
oil changes.
Right, you can get another season out of those snow tires.
I
want the record to show Jen's over here. Jen's over here.
Pull the studs out. Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah, so
I want the record to show Jen's over going, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But a lot of times when we talk about this would be great, and then we don't talk about, well, who would do it? And then it just kind of floats out there in the parking lot kind of issue. Because it's like, well, who's gonna take on that thing? So.
So how would we do some analysis? Because I'm interested in that too, as long as I know, that's the,
clone Jen.
as far as, potential savings.
So I think VR.
Because if there
place to
isn't,
start.
if there isn't significant, then
Right.
I'm not, the status quo is okay as far as.
I also wonder,
really
some of our
support it.
fleet, are they all being taken care of? Are they getting
Right.
oil changes so they would last longer? Are they being
Yeah.
maintained, or are they just sitting out there with,
Right.
as well? So I think the VRNR is probably the place we're starting to gather all that information, and as we prepare for the budget, that'll have, because it has the mileage, it has the VIN numbers, it has the
Yeah. got
a lot of
all that
the
information.
year, and a lot of the information we're gathering now from the department.
Yeah, because there's an expense, even if they're, when I look, because I choke on that insurance premium every year. And that's every single vehicle, there's
Even
a
the one
cost.
Sitting there with a flat tire.
With a flat tire, we're paying the same for that as we are for the one that's getting driven every day,
Back
going
and
around
forth
back and
Right.
forth to work.
Yeah,
Uh,
the commuter rate.
the commuter rig. But
Safer to have the one on flat tires.
so it really is, because you could, if we do some fleet where it's pooled, really in a perfect world, we don't want a bunch of vehicles sitting around not getting used, because they should be being used, because that's actually the most efficient use of the dollars. And if it is, and yeah, sometimes people, we're all like that. I don't want to have to adjust my schedule, but maybe I do. It's, it's apples to oranges, but one of the issues way back in 2010, we had West End Services down at the Pioneer Center. We used to have a person that was the front desk person. So when you came in, and this was one of these positions that went away and it was, my God, it was going to be a calamity. There was going to be wild parties and, rioting, and God only knew what was going to happen in that building if there wasn't a person sitting at the front door. And it was going to be mayhem. So the argument, and the person's not here anymore, so I can say this, that came in because we eased our way where we were like, okay, we're going to make it a half-time position, because they had other duties where they were taking permits in. But again, it's like, okay, you're getting 3 permits a week are being dropped off here. And, we can put signs that people figure, if I come in the building, I can find the health department, humans can figure it out. But the big argument was like, my God, who is going to manage the conference rooms? Because we had a whole system in place that you had to go through this person. If I'm going to have a meeting to make sure, because it was going to be the apocalypse if we did not have somebody. And I was like, I think if I go, oh, there's somebody in that conference room. Oh, this one's empty. I'll use this one, or something like that. It's the same kind of thing. The same, where I think people can manage themselves.
Or in that case, to her point, we electronically, you can put them on
Sure.
the calendar and people can.
And then
Calendar.
Commissioner Sauter just comes in anyway.
There's a pecking order.
There's gotta be software
How long are you gonna be?
To manage that, and then we would know, because that's the thing, they come in and, oh, this car is always breaking down, and I guarantee if I ask them when, where, how much is the cost, they don't have that information in front of them. When they come in and want the new vehicle, they don't have the information and the maintenance logs. I'm an ex-mechanic, I want to know. If it was on a fleet, you would have all that, it'd all be in software. And I don't see any way, shape, or form that doesn't cut.
Yeah, I think we can save some money
That doesn't fix our budget.
there. So get some ideas on how you would quantify that savings.
And even though the commissioners have said that you do not and have not want to spend any of this current COVID money, all the CARES Act money, Rebuild America money, on ongoing expenses, and you've asked for a list of one-time expenses. If somebody presented an efficiency, we need a one-time to buy this thing so we can do that. That's what you've kind of indicated. So that wouldn't come out of the budget. That wouldn't gouge somebody else.
And a new financial system to get rid of.
Exactly. Say, so they would have.
Retire, not get rid of.
Right.
Retire.
No, we'll get rid of it.
Transition.
Set it on
Up
fire.
there to set it up.
I'm okay with setting it on fire.
Yeah.
It apparently is leaving us now.
Working apparently.
We don't know,
Yeah,
you
it's-
know it, yeah,
Oh,
we,
yeah, we do.
oh, yeah. It's not
I
working
One of the
very
things
well.
that I think needs to be kept in mind, though, is that government is not always forward thinking. And like the projects right now with where we have, I don't know, 3 or 4 different people scanning documents. And Gordy just got that contract to shred it. Documents aren't going away, you know, so do we wait until another 10 years and have to bring in massive amounts of people to just scan documents and shred them? Or do we keep some of those processes as an ongoing? So, you know, maybe it's one floater person who goes from department to department and their job is to be handed by somebody, you know,
Scan these, shred
scan
this.
these, shred this, just, you know, management. But
Which is part of what the public records manager, coordinator, administrator was going to help do, not necessarily do the scanning, but help departments be able to do it on their own, or at least coordinate those activities, I think, so.
But we do a lot of penny wise, pound foolish.
I agree. Well, that's why you make those conscious decisions when you actually have time. Like we have, again, I want everyone to, you know, I'll repeat again, we're not broke. We are not, there is no crisis. This is the opportunity now to plan for that. And so that you don't, because you do get in situation, you know, there are lots of counties that got to the situation where they, you know, there was no planning for the future. They were just trying to keep the lights on today. And then you do really bad, you make bad decisions long-term.
Well, to that point, I think we've all had this discussion, so if you guys can work better than I'm going to.
Although I haven't been hungry for like 25 years.
Part of the direction part of the discretion the commissioners have in the budget is you can, you know, things can be done over time. So it's not like December 31st, every single thing
No.
that you identified, you want to transition, change, stop, do different, or don't do it all.
Right.
Doesn't have to be December 31st. It can be at the end of the first quarter of next year, you know. You're still burning a little money at that point, but it's not like the world has to change in one day. It can if that's what you choose, but you can also, what's the word I'm looking for? Staggers. Phase the change a little bit, and that takes the sting out of it.
Sure.
What?
I feel like I'm talking about you.
So that's.
That was awesome.
So that's
That was the perfect look we were looking for.
We weren't talking anything.
No, we weren't
but that
talking
worked
anything.
perfectly.
So that's also
Yeah.
good for the departments to know that you have the discretion on to face things.
Right.
That's
Right.
not delay it. That's not
Right.
kick the can down the road. That's not that, but.
Right, and that's to my earlier point is we have that ability now because we can do that. That's why you don't wait until it's
Right.
like, this is a crisis and we have to do something. And you plan for it, and we may phase it. So I was talking earlier about the transfers into the road fund.
Right.
You're phasing that out over a period of time. There could be other things as long as we have a plan that this is going to fix all of this and it's going to be sustainable. Because if we do look at new revenue, if we are going to look at, you know, adjusting, sales tax rates or any other thing, those aren't going to just happen. The money doesn't just fall out of, where we decide. Those are going to phase in over time. And so you're going to have an opportunity then to see, because part of what we're going to try to do isn't going to work.
Right.
Some things are going to work better than we thought, and some things aren't going to work at all.
Almost
Yeah.
everything has an unintended
It
consequence.
has an unintended consequence.
You don't know it until you know it, and then it's like, "Ugh."
Yeah.
Again, but that's why we have supplemental budget process for the unknown, the emergency, the unplanned for. Gives the commissioners.
And this brings up a question that I don't know that I'll get an honest answer out of anybody. But people might just go, I'm not gonna talk about it. Do you think there's people that use supplemental and they kind of always knew they were gonna use supplemental? Is that a normal thing, or am I just?
I don't, from just the experience of my first supplemental, I almost get the vibe that there's more of a fear of having to do a supplemental.
Yeah.
You don't
rather
want
than-
to do supplemental.
That's good.
You guys agree?
What your
Yeah.
budget-
I don't
We
have
don't
a
have
history.
Yeah.
certain people that are constantly the same supplemental for the same reasons
Well, and sometimes there's a supplemental because a project didn't get finished in the prior year.
Right.
And the money's there, and that would be me.
So there's no
for the next
abuse of the supplemental, is I guess my.
I would
I
say
don't think there's
no,
an abuse of it.
no. Ruby?
Well, from what I've noticed, like with grants, because it's a biennium, from July to a year or so later, it's a kind of a moving target on what the last 6 months of the budget will be. So that does kind of create a need for supplementals because it's a moving target.
I would say too, historically, the only time that I would say that we knowingly, like department, because the board has even done it, where we haven't finished negotiations. We haven't decided, are we doing a COLA or not? And we've said, we need to get the budget put to bed. So whatever that number is, we'll fix everybody on the supplemental.
Okay.
And so we have this sort of like, we know we have this liability out there, we just don't know how much it is. But I would say generally, I haven't really seen, as like a department where they're like, oh yeah, I'm submitting this and I know it's not right.
Plus,
And
with
I'll sneak it in later.
Plus the process itself, you're under the microscope. You're probably 1 or 2 or 3 departments, public hearing, public ask questions.
Yeah.
It's put out there, can't go up, it can go down. I mean, it's.
Right, that's not a good, it's like that, do you want to be the gazelle in the 1,000
Yeah.
herd, or do you want to be the last one at twilight crossing the river?
It does feel like that.
When the lions are.
It does feel like that.
We can always fix our budget problems if we bought a county dunk tank. And then we just charge people to throw. rocks.
Us, yeah.
What if they tell you
We're
we're putting
heavily
oil in there
electric.
instead of
They
water?
used to
Don't
that
do it.
fair.
Yeah.
Don't do
You
it if
could,
it's got
there's no
oil in
way
it.
you could make a lot of money. if
You
sit
could,
on that dunk
Or you
tank
could
right
be
now.
the, club pitchfork boiling oil vendor.
Well, I think we've
Sell treats.
We've got a lot of guidance today. I mean, I think we've.
Well, you're coming back at 1,
Yeah.
and I assume we are, and we're gonna start having some discussion
Oh, were
on,
we having afternoon session?
are we not? Were we not?
I'm just.
That's the
It's
way
I don't
it's
think so.
set up from 8:30 to 10.
We
and
canceled
then-
Board of Health,
Yeah,
and then we're done.
no,
And then we come back at 1, and we're gonna continue, we can start having some discussions on the, we've been working on the expense side on the revenues.
Rockstar, if you ever leave, I'm gonna hunt you down.
Yeah.
Well, that was very basic. I was not happy.
I don't care. You're not leaving ever. If anybody poaches her,
Yeah.
Comes
I
to
don't
me
think
for.
so. We already done poster.
there's no such thing.
No, we don't get those
Right.
generally.
Yeah, so
You don't poach from a nuclear
just remind them,
power.
Jen, they have a salary study coming.
Yes.
Yeah, so you guys have a salary study coming, so if you want to make sure you don't lose her.
She'll do the fleet.
She'll do the
Add that to the list that Jake's
Yeah,
already
that's
given
the
me.
list.
No car for you.
No car for you. That's right. So, okay,
But we'll continue the conversation at 1 o'clock today, or 1:15, 1 or 1:15.
I
thought it
don't
was
have-
Whatever-
So I-
our time is your time.
Well,
We'll be here
no,
whenever you want to be.
we had a
One.
comment this morning on the radio about, agenda and not, sticking to it. No secret meetings. So if we said, whatever we said on whatever's posted is what time we will start. Not
I guess we
before.
can look
I'll
at
go
that.
look at it.
Go look and see what we said. So you don't want to have any secret talks about
No, it was
raising
in
revenue.
relation to the sheriff thing that we did a couple weeks ago, because we were just gonna start at 10, and instead we started at 9:30.
12:30?
Somehow that was secret meeting.
I guess we'll be back at 12:30.
12:30, whose number was
That's a
that?
bizarre time.
I guess they figured we were ending at Board of Health at 11.
Oh, and that gave us time for
Yeah,
lunch.
Gave it
that's
an
what
hour.
I did.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
The
they
problem is
is
that screws
her.
everybody else's lunch.
Yeah, sorry.
We can always start at 12:30 and.
I'm not-
Actually, we can
I'm
always
not-
start,
Yes.
we can start later than the schedule. We just can't start early.
I'm pretty confident nobody in this room takes lunch. So,
That's how it's been for us for a while.
well, I think 12:30 works.
Really? Because we do.
I
I'm
know.
gonna
you
go on
do.
record to my earlier statement of the 25-year
Anybody
drought.
wants to be invited to lunch with us, it's
Come
an
ahead.
open invitation.
She was
We haven't
quiet.
found anybody willing to take us up on going to lunch yet. Eventually.
With us, we're not buying, we're just,
Well, it's-
yeah.
I think they just don't want to be seen in
I
public
know.
with us in case
Oh,
somebody's
I
carrying a
would-
pitchfork.
I don't want to. be
Aaron
seen in
can-
public.
Aaron
Every time I come up here, I feel like there's a pitchfork.
Yeah.
Aaron can thank us later for softening you up. Get you in a good.
Yeah,
mood,
yeah,
get you ready.
it's true.
Aaron, we've done all we can to get them ready for you. They're yours now.
I walked through and.
We have 10 more minutes.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I will need to adjourn our meeting.
Yes, we're good.
Are we starting boarding out
At 10.
early?
No, I don't think we can.
Yeah, otherwise we're already done.
For some more then.
So maybe we'll recess, take a tea break.
Yeah. Okay, I will recess the Board of Commissioners meeting until apparently 12:30 this evening.
Yeah.
I was trying to make sure.
No, no, that's-
based
no, that
on
makes
having
sense.
downtime and.
No, because we've said that. Yeah. Got it. Okay, I will call the meeting to order of the Klickitat County Board of Health. I believe Commissioner Christopher, Commissioner Sauter are I don't believe, I know, we are here in chambers. Commissioner Anderson is also joining us via phone, looks like, and I do see our members, Mr. Moyer and Ms. Pennington are also joining us. So let the record show that all Board of Health members are in attendance. So we will start with that, and I will move for, I would look for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second the motion.
I can't make the motion. I was looking.
So moved.
Thank you. Sorry. And is your second still
No,
good?
now I might report. No, I'll second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion on that? Hearing or seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 There we go. There we go, Paul. Motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to the minutes. Did everybody get a chance to see those? These are from the June 24th meeting.
I had no changes.
Then I would look for a motion.
I'll move to approve the minutes from the 24th.
I will
A
second.
second.
Okay, we give that to Sue. I have a motion from Mr. Anderson and a second from Sue Pennington on the minutes from June 24th. Any discussion on those? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 I will abstain as I was not here for the 24th, and you have more than enough. Motion passes. That brings us to COVID-19 discussion. We will start with Director Quinn.
Yes, so good morning. I'll be taking Dr. Person's kind of clinical update. So she was unable to join us this morning, so I'll just do a quick overview. Just as far as the US, and I'll start with the US and just kind of drill down from there. There's been quite a increase, 43% increase in cases across the US in the last week, in the last 7 days. So definitely keeping an eye on that as far as what impacts that may have ultimately to our state and then down to our county. I know in Klickitat County, we've actually had a decrease of cases that we've seen since May. So we're averaging about 1 case per day. So we have 13 cases this month, which is much better than we had well over 30 by now, I think at the point last month. We are still seeing a lot of spread of variants, where we were notified yesterday that there was an instance of the Delta variant in Klickitat County. I think it's important that we all understand that variants are identified through a public health surveillance system that does not allow us to identify the individual that has the variant. We just know that it's in our county, that there was a case that was that had that variant. There will be a press release going out later today about that. We are still seeing some breakthrough cases with vaccines. We do have one official We have 2 unofficial. The official ones we confirm through the state. The unofficial ones, we know they've been vaccinated based on seeing their records and positive COVID testing. So keeping an eye on that is still important. Anyone that has symptoms, they still need to be tested regardless of their vaccine status, because we do see breakthrough cases. 90% of the cases that we have in the state that are 90% of COVID cases in the state are in the unvaccinated. So we're still really encouraging people to get vaccines. The Delta variant is now the most prevalent variant in Washington state. It's at 41% of all of the cases identified in the state for the week of, or for the 2-week period, June 13th to June 26th. We get that information updated every week, and I would anticipate that it's higher, that percentage will go higher in the subsequent weeks. So knowing that the Delta variant is more infectious, that are more likely to have severe symptoms, more likely to be hospitalized, and those who are hospitalized are more likely to die. So again, the importance of making a choice to get the vaccine for that. Here in Klickitat County, we are sitting right at 991 cases. We have 7 active cases in the county right now. And I believe it's been since the last Board of Health, we have had another county resident who has passed away. So that leaves it, so it's 11 individuals that have passed due to COVID in this county that we're aware of. Vaccine rates, we're at 21,433 per the state website this morning. That's an increase of about 600 since our last Board of Health meeting on the 24th of June. So we're still giving vaccines every week. It's just a very slow trickle. That leaves us with 43% of those 12 and older who are vaccinated, which is 38% of our total population.
Again, I'm sorry.
43.7% of those 12 and older. 38% of the total population. 47% of people 12 and older have initiated vaccine in this county. So I think that's really encouraging. I'm still really hopeful by September we could potentially get to 50%. I think that's a lofty goal, but we're still going to try to work on some marketing materials to help encourage people to make that choice to get that vaccine. So otherwise, as far as, things have kind of plateaued, vaccines are a little bit stagnant, or cases are really low right now. So just plan moving forward. We are continuing to do our case investigations as you know, as we get the positive cases, we are touching base with the people that are positive, asking them to talk to the people that they've been around and encourage them to get tested as well. We're seeing a decrease in testing throughout the county. That's not unusual. We're seeing that in the state and the US as well. So when you look at the website, our positivity rates are pretty high just due to the lack of people that are getting tested. Typically only those that are symptomatic, which makes our percentage look really high. But really our case counts, I think, are more reflective than the actual positivity rate, with at least today. We're still going to continue to plan as if we're going to do boosters in the fall. That is Health and Human Services actually did speak with Pfizer. Pfizer is still saying, based on data today, that they would likely not do a booster in the fall. That's not those that have had the Moderna. That's not those that have Johnson & Johnson. We're still planning it because, again, I think we've talked about this. I feel it's irresponsible to not plan to do boosters in the fall. And if we don't, that's fine, but we're going to be ready if we do. We're continuing to work on outreach materials to encourage people to make the choice to get vaccinated, and talking to people about what barriers are, making sure that we can help people with transportation if they need it. Just any assistance they need in getting a vaccine, we can certainly help. Anyone that was homebound that requested a vaccine, we were able to go to their home if they called and requested that we do so. And we've had a really successful getting a lot of people that were homebound or didn't have transportation vaccinated at their request. So the other thing I think will be a hot topic at some point is what it will look like when schools go back in the fall. The guidance, the CDC released their recommendations, but the DOH won't release what they actually recommend for Washington State schools until later this month. So until I have that finalized, mostly won't address that, just because
You'd just be speculating.
I would be speculating, and I just don't, we don't need to do that. So that guidance is coming later this month. I think that will be, we're waiting for that because we have a lot of work to do with the schools to get ready for fall, so. Otherwise, I just would say, again, we just are really grateful for the support of the Board of Health. Our citizen members continue to engage in community activities where my staff don't have the bandwidth to participate in meetings, supporting us with vaccine clinics. And so we just are very grateful as a department for all of the support that our citizen members and the commissioners have given us in the last year. So,
Okay.
pending your questions, that's really my update.
Okay, board members, any questions or comments for the director or just for general edification?
I do not.
No.
Yeah,
Aaron-
Aaron, I wanted to, go ahead, Sue.
No, it's okay. Go.
Go ahead, Jake.
So on Tuesday, it was brought up about the different organizations potentially coming in and going door to door in Klickitat County. Somebody sent me information about an organization that's doing that in the Dells. I think it's the Peace Corps. Your staff will not be doing any door to door knocks, right?
Absolutely not.
Okay, and then I believe there's some confusion out there, and I was hoping you could put it on the record on the contract that we signed, that the county commissioners signed with a third-party agency to help with marketing materials and looking at numbers. Could you give a brief overview on that and ensure the public that that does not include any on the grounds, door-to-door, doorbelling or anything like that?
Yeah, so the contract that the commissioners signed with Health Commons was essentially a data sharing agreement. We can't discuss really data that we pull off our child profile information without having that agreement. So if for some unforeseen reason there was any personal health information that was accidentally shared, that both of us have that protection. Our contract with them, we actually don't have a specific contract with them. They are contracted with the Department of Health, and their job is to work with us to develop marketing materials. So if we want to put something out in the mail, or if we want to put something on our social media, that's really specific to the culture of our county, rather than doing a one size all, just share a Facebook page or whatever. So it's really marketing. It is marketing materials only. They've also helped, the same organization has set up programs with the schools so that the schools have the ability to do testing within the school. They did that in Goldendale. Goldendale was one of 13 schools in the spring that was able to do testing for their students with permission, obviously, as a pilot project that was very successful. And they've also, I think, helped a couple of summer camps set up testing if the summer camps found that to be valuable. So it's an organization that's just supporting the work that we're doing. And as far as I know, have never, well, I can't say they've never been in the county. I don't know what their personal lives are, but as a business associate, they have not actually been here in person.
Okay, thanks for that.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Pennington, you had a question or a comment?
Yes, and I'm not sure where this fits in, but this is regarding testing as well. More and more people are starting to travel now, are needing to get a COVID results, to have COVID results within 72 hours of travel. And it has been problematic. The buzz I hear out in the community is that it's hard to get that service. And I just thought, I just wonder if you have any comment on that, if that is part of caring, of being public health, or at least of assuring care in some way, so that our residents aren't having to go, to Portland or, to really figure that out. Anyway, any comments on that? Erin.
So I would wonder, Sue, if the issue is, so if you do a rapid test, obviously you get your result right then, but if you're traveling and they require a PCR test, which for a lot of our providers is potentially a send out test. I know they have had some capacity to do the PCRs, but have reserved that for people who are potentially being admitted to an ICU and another, when we transfer them out. And so not sure if the 72 hours is difficult because of just the process of sending a lab out of the county and being able to get that result in that 72-hour period, where if you go into the bigger city, there's more labs that have that capacity to turn that around a little bit quicker. So
Sure. Yeah, I know that turnaround time is an issue, or it can be. Anyway, maybe when you're having your, your next powwow with the providers, at least to bring that topic up so that you have an understanding of, where they're at with it, or if it is something that realistically cannot be provided in this county. Anyway, people are asking, and at least it would be helpful to know that, because I've called around for a friend, and that actually wasn't for travel. She was having a procedure done in Portland, and the people who answer the phone don't necessarily know what's going on. And she actually was able to get something over in Hood River, get it done, and it went well. But anyway, it would be interesting to know what to tell our residents about that. So thank you.
On another point, Stu, I know I was in the airport recently. They do have testing at the airport.
Yes.
You can get a test at the Portland airport, which I know is not the solution, and I will definitely follow up, but just for anyone's reference.
Sure. Yeah. My daughter got one, and it was maybe $200, but don't quote me. I can't remember. But quite expensive, but yes, it is available.
That's
Yeah, I can speak because I have traveled recently where I was required to have the PCR test within the 72 hours. And it's not that it's not necessarily available locally, but it's not available. They won't guarantee results because of in the time, because they have to send it out and then get it back. And if you're traveling, you need some certainty that you have that. And we went to the PDX and had it done there because they can guarantee 24-hour turnaround. It's very expensive. Ours was $170 each for that test, which was mandatory. But I have heard there's another, because ours was done, we had booked it through one of the approved sites through the airline that we were traveling on. And I know different airlines, have different contracts with different labs, because I was on my trip, we were meeting folks that traveled with a different airline, and their contract was only $90 for the same test. So so people can shop around, but it is an issue. That 72 hours, if you want to get that test in the county, it's really hard. You probably would be okay, but you don't know, and so that is a real problem. I wasn't that concerned about it as far as as far as long-term, because my assumption was those requirements for that will eventually go away. But with the Delta variant, I think we're stuck with the testing requirements for the foreseeable future. So this is definitely a problem that's still here, and it didn't go away on July 1st.
Well, at least if we can tell our residents, just be honest about the situation, that's good. But not knowing makes it seem like, oh, well, we can't get this here and nobody knows. And so anyway, good, helpful information. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Stu. I'll follow up with everyone on that. And then I did forget Cindy with North Shore. I think she's online, but just sent me an email that wanted everyone for me to let everyone know. that they are doing another Hispanic community focused event this Saturday, and that they are continuing to do about 30 to 50 vaccines per week. And I would say that's probably in alignment. We're, I think, doing 20 to 40, so that just seems to be kind of, yeah.
Okay, other questions or comments from board members to Director Quinn? I'm not seeing any ones or hearing any other ones. And then I do see that we have Rob is on from Skyline.
Yeah, if they want, I don't know, Rob, if you had anything
I
you
think you wanted
wanted
to
to share.
update the Board of Health, or KVH, if Leslie's on from KVH, or Cindy from North Shore, this would be a good opportunity.
Sure, this is Rob. Yeah, and just to respond to Sue's question, we are doing asymptomatic testing for travel and other reasons. And I believe those are being sent out on our results are coming back normally within 24 to 48 hours, but we can't guarantee that. There may be some reason why that it doesn't come back for 72 to 4 to, you know, or longer. As testing ability increases or access to the kits to run the in-house tests, you know, we may be able to provide same-day PCR test turnaround, but I don't think we have access to enough test kits available yet. And we want to make sure that we have enough for symptomatic patients where we do need the results right away. The vaccination, yeah, we're doing maybe 20 a week also. It's really slowed down, and we're in the process of shifting our vaccine administration over to our clinic and away from the mass vaccination site here at the hospital, just because of the volumes. So that's about it from Skyline.
Thanks, Rob. Any questions for Skyline?
No, thanks, Rob. That was helpful.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So I don't know, yeah, Cindy at North Shore, or if there's somebody on from KVH, I can't see everybody.
Yeah, this is Cindy from North Shore, and yeah, you guys are all right on about travel testing. We do it same as Rob had described, but it's a send out. So we just try and give people the heavy kind of maybe overly cautious. We can't guarantee timing of the receipt. And we have also made the decision to prioritize folks with symptoms. And that is part of the challenge, is that there's such a variability right now in testing demand for symptomatic patients. You know, some days we'll have 2 people that need to be tested, and some days it's 20. And so that's a really hard thing to staff to, and then to make sure that we always can have everybody who wants to get in, including travel testing. So that's where travel testing gets a little more of the short shrift.
Okay. Thank you, Cindy. Is there anybody on from KVH, if there was anything you wanted to share? Or I don't see anybody, but I have a lot of numbers with no names next to them. Does not appear. Okay. Anything else, Erin?
I don't have anything further, no.
Okay, I will now open up the meeting. We're running a little bit ahead, but public access to the board. We do have some citizens online. If this would be your opportunity to address the Board of Health with questions or comments, please raise your hand or get our attention, and give us your name and what community you're from for the record. I'm not seeing anything. No. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody, so that is that.
I do have a question.
Yes.
Are we going to continue to have monthly Board of Health updates, or when are we going to go back to quarterly?
So our next one is actually scheduled, I think, per the advertisements that we'd set up back a while back. I think the next one is October. I think we should probably reevaluate that next month and see if we don't need one in September, because I'm a little concerned about what fall's gonna look like. I don't have a lot of concerns about what next month's gonna look like. I think that my
I don't
update will.
mind moving to bi-monthly, but I think monthly right now is kind of overdue.
Yes, and this is a conversation that we could probably follow up on, but I wondered, and I'd be interested in Sue and Paul's opinion as well. Because I do the update with the commissioners every 5 weeks, if there would be value in rolling both. I don't know if that's possible to roll them both together.
Sure.
And then that's
I
just.
think that would ease efficiency.
Yeah.
Since, and not that I don't enjoy hanging out with you, but twice in 1 week.
Just a historical point. In the past, the Board of Health was part of the regular BOCC. They would recess and then do the Board of Health and then go back to the BOCC meeting.
Yeah.
So that's very doable.
Yeah, so I'd be curious for comments from the non-county commissioner members of the board, what your thoughts are on that. Sue or Paul?
This is Paul. I think Aaron's lead on that would be well considered because of the current situation. And I agree with Mr. Christopherson that the once a month is perhaps not necessary at this time, and by every couple months would probably be agreeable with me for sure. And whatever Aaron, I think she's most aware of the situations, and I appreciate her judgment on this call.
Yeah, and I will agree with that, Paul. I feel like my gut says, September would be a good time. Just because it seems like October is a long ways away and things might really be happening anyway. All that said, I think if we're in conversation about it, that's the best. And also to, anything that can keep us up to date, including Aaron, just when we can actually tune in to your updates to the board, to the county commissioners. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Those are open meetings. And so that's another, avenue. But as long as we feel like we have an update that's fairly current. And that said, Aaron has really been good about alerting Paul and I, or Paul and me when there is something. So I feel like it's better than it's been ever since I've been on the board. So anyway, but I guess September bi-monthly or every other month feels good to me right now. But anyway.
And just for situational awareness for everyone, at any point as commissioners, you can request that we have a Board of Health meeting. I, as the director, can request you to have a Board of Health meeting. So if something was pressing that needed what I feel like urgent attention, that we can accommodate that regardless of what our set schedule is.
Okay, I would agree. And I think we are getting to the point where thankfully, at least in the short term, I think we could go to a longer schedule, and then so I think September would be fine. And I will defer to Director Quinn, who does the heavy lifting on supporting these meetings. We show up and have all the stuff provided to us, and we don't do much of the providing. We're other than commenting.
That's valuable, so that's good. Lee, do you know when my next department update is? Do you have that? I don't have.
Not right off, but
Okay. Well, we can get with
We can get with
close.
that.
Yeah,
So we'll
get
get that. So our current public notices that we've sent, or as far as our meeting schedule that we have done.
Yes.
So this would be a change. I'm assuming we would have to revise those and publish that.
I would have to ask Lee. I think that's. a
Okay,
Lee
I mean, whatever we have to
Yes,
do to make
yes.
sure to keep, so
Yep.
we don't want to be having any
No,
improper meetings
No.
or,
I messed that up one time. I've learned my lesson.
right.
Life lessons. Yeah, no, I'll work with Lee because I don't know the ins and outs, or if Q's on and he knows the ins and outs. September 21st.
September 21st looks like that's the date at this time. We will do whatever noticing we need to do to make sure we
I'll
stay
work that out.
current with the law.
Yes.
And that's what we'll shoot for. Any other issues from members? Anything that anybody wants to bring up for the good of the order?
Well, just to go back with that is there a motion needed to put a September meeting on the, on the docket or not? Do we-
You don't need a motion. I will just set it up and invite you and do.
Okay,
Create public
Great.
notices.
okay, thank you, Erin, and we do appreciate how much work it is for you. So you're not taken for granted. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Definitely not, Aaron. Thank you very much.
Okay, anything else for the good of the order?
I have nothing.
Well, I am kind of interrupting citizen comments. I don't know if you want to.
Oh, I could go back. Okay. Yeah, one more shout out before we close because it's now actually 10:31, which if somebody was showing up off the agenda to give citizen comment at 10:30. So I will give another opportunity before we close for public access to the board. So citizen comment, if there's anybody on the Zoom or phone, this is your opportunity. *6 to unmute yourself, raise your hand.
Not seeing anything.
Not seeing anything. So I think with that, I would accept a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I would move that we adjourn the meeting until September 21st.
I will
second
second
it.
the motion.
I'm going to give that to Paul. Seconded. We have a motion and a second to adjourn the Board of Health meeting. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey.
What if I just want to say no and leave meeting? I want to continue.
Rick says, got it,
Is that
or
a
no thanks.
question?
Yeah. It kind of works the same way when you use your credit card and it says, is the amount okay? You can't say no, and that just means it's canceled. I say that sometimes. I don't like the amount, but it's the correct amount. All right. We are back in session and there's Jake in real life. We're waving to you.
So commissioners, before we get into, I think what you want is the revenue discussion. Jen and I are wondering, would it be beneficial to the commissioners if we were to have the department send all of their fees in and we have to generate a master fee schedule, at least for the budget process, so that you have all that information in front of you?
I would say yes, but I would change the language where it's not just it's revenues to, as far as fee for service kind of thing, which is really, as far, because not everything is a fee. It's also.
I agree with that, and I don't know that this is the correct time for it, but a deeper discussion on that I would like to see is the fee and what even their personal opinion, the actual cost for providing that is.
Depending on what it is, might be hard to equate.
Right, yeah. As I said, if possible.
And we've never been asked, nobody's ever, maybe they haven't had the time to do the analysis, or it's just been the same for a long time.
I'm just thinking, because we have to be looking at subsidizing of all the subsidizing we're doing too. And try to get it on an even keel subsidy.
I just think we thought it's beneficial for you to have it all, because we talk about in bits and pieces, this department, that department, this, and not all fees are created equal and not all revenues fall in the same bucket. So having that in front of you, at least you'd be able to look at one document and see across the board. So.
Okay, I feel bad for telling you yes, because I know it just creates more work for everybody else but me. and I feel really bad about that.
Did you just plant me?
No,
Yeah, but
no, we'll do it. I think
It's not only you.
Yeah,
it's
not only
certainly
you,
but it's
everybody.
global.
Yeah.
Although there may be some people that don't, because I think almost every department has some service or something that they charge a fee for, or
So they include the revenue in their budget, so there must be some process.
I sent 2 checks a year to that guy back there.
So I have a question about that for the revenue. Are we just focusing on the general fund at this point, or is it everything? Before we go down that path.
Well, that was my question, is are we getting to the point where we really need to get the department, I mean, are we trying to get too many pieces to where we really need the departments to come in with their, because if they have some of this stuff, are we reinventing the wheel?
That's what they said. They're gonna ask.
We're just gonna gather it from the departments.
And just putting it all in
No,
one
but I'm
place
saying-
rather than,
And that's
because we
fine.
get that, but we get it during the budget process. They come in, building department comes in, they present their thing and they don't just present the expenditure side, they present the revenue side if they have them, permit fees, blah, blah, blah. Adult probation, the ankle bracelets, I think we charge for those.
Right.
And then, so that shows up on a revenue line. And we're thinking as we're, trying to get a jump on it, maybe if we're looking at ways to increase revenue, we want to see, and it's likely a lot of those are just dust. They're nothing as far as, I don't think or we either that, and then is there who sets that fee? And do we actually have any ability to adjust that fee, even if we wanted to? Or is it a mandated thing that we have to do? And yeah, sorry, it's built in that you lose money on it. We don't care.
I guess I have a concern that it's possibly a fee that was the same fee from 10 years ago and has never been adjusted.
Yeah.
Right.
I would
And
agree,
so
and that's.
even
what I was
if
just
it's
trying to
budget
get
dust, it needs to be adjusted. So
Well, it's
if
not,
we do it is a good question,
Yeah.
but that's my.
but it would be, I would say it really is everything, because I'm thinking of like the fees that we have interlocal agreements with the cities to provide dispatching services. That's a revenue. We get revenue. We know we're heavily subsidizing it, but we don't really know what is that number? Like, we'll see the contracts because we have to approve them with the city of White Salmon that we do there. Because for a while we didn't. We said they were upset with the number, and they were like, you can take your $12.62 and go see what you can buy. And they surprisingly came back, and
I think we're just trying to get it all in one place.
But then
I
again,
don't know
the
if that's
question
actually
is,
true. Definitely not the $12 part, but as an example, it
just
might have been
general fund
120.
or everything? That's what I'm
Well, we're
asking.
doing the 3% for everything.
Yeah, I think it's
We're doing the
everything.
3%.
Right, I just clarified.
Just want a clarification.
I think it's everything.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, Jake, Commissioner Anderson? We do see you there. We see you that you're at home.
Oh, he didn't unmute himself. Perfect. You know, that's that little unmute button in the corner.
Star
Jake.
6.
Star 6, Jake.
Sorry, don't. I usually use my phone for the mute rather than this thing because I was reading what Jen sent.
Okay.
I'm with you guys. I did have a question though on what Jen sent. On your form where it says 2020 budget amended, is that the percentage amended to July, or is that the overall total budget on the third column? Page 2.
Oh, that's a Kyanter report of 2021 budget amended would be the approved budget plus whatever supplemental is loaded.
But are those the current?
So, but that's for the whole year, right?
Yeah, that should be the current, that should be the real numbers because this is for 2020, not 2021. So. But the
So
reason-
like for timber harvest taxes, we've got 611,000 of income. We budgeted for 75,000. Did we budget 75,000 for the entire year or just up until this current actual?
That was what I was gonna bring up this afternoon.
I suspect though.
I'm not trying to get ahead of schedule. I'm just trying to, so I understand.
I think that's the year budget, not
The year budget. I have a question.
not through the period. Yes, ma'am.
Is that the timber tax that's budgeted in the non-departmental?
I would think so, but let me check.
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it
Should
should
be.
You
be.
never know
Tax
what we
budgeted.
have not had.
So it's
any
not,
for
it's not
so
the
long.
receipts from,
And
it's
so
the
I
other
budget-
timber
I try to
dollars.
budget more realistically.
So the timber dollars from the timber sale are, they will come through as sale of fixed assets. The timber.
Harvest tax
that's
is
that's the
excise
tab,
tax.
and that's the one I was talking about the other day, that since 2018 have been, that we're gonna have to pay some back. So that's the TAB.
Yes. Lee, answer your question.
Okay, thank you.
So Lee's the only one that, Lee budgeted that $75,000 in non-departmental. And therefore that would tell me that she's the only one that budgeted for timber harvest tax. But that's something that we receive every year, and I was trying to pull the data of how much we have received historically, because like Jake just pointed out, you know, for 2020, we received $600,000. For 2019, we received $460,000. And so if only one department is budgeting for something that we historically
Historically,
received,
yeah.
then maybe there's some revenue there that we're just not
Okay.
capturing because it's unbudgeted.
And I think it's also, you don't know what it's gonna be. So when
Yeah.
I book that, there's a reserve fund in there, and I can't remember what it is, timber reserve, that's got 144,000 in it. So the way that whole calculation works, it's very calculated, and it tells you where it goes and how it works, because it's part of the levy process. And so that comes back through. So when that money comes and gets booked in there, it comes in 4 times a year from the state. And,
But if just question on statement, if there's a 600,000 for 1 year and the previous year 400,000, would we continue to always budget 75,000 or?
no, that's one of the things I have on mine is that the amount, but we gotta be careful. It's like, okay, you could take interest rate, investment interest, income. That's gonna be 30,000 versus the 290,000 that we had budgeted. So, you know, but what I was saying is, we also need to get to a real number, even though like 400, 600.
Right.
It might not go 800, it might go back to 400 or 350.
So you gotta play it safe to some degree.
There's some
Right.
parts where
Really
you have to be careful of what you do. Like real estate excise tax, we are in a boom, we are getting more and more, and we can raise that number, I think, but we just have to understand that if we do go down, then we may not meet that number. There's a consequence to budgeting, you know.
Closer to the.
Yeah,
That might be a little more painful not to get what you built a budget on than.
especially on the revenue side.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice.
Reported
to budget.
expenses.
Yeah, it's nice when they.
Oh, we got extra.
I told Jim that, I said, if I ever give you a number, the revenue number is gonna be really low and the expense number is gonna be really high.
And just to go along with what Greg was just saying, I just kind of just pulled up the 2018 number of timber harvest tax was, you know, another $600,000 range. So we're swinging 200,000.
Right.
Could be significant.
For a lot more than 75.
But it's more than
even if we
75.
change the 75 to 400, we can almost call that a safe number.
I don't like to operate in 3 years. I prefer 5 to 10 when forecasting that kind of stuff. But yeah, we're budgeting 75 is high actually. 50,000 was budgeted in 2019 and 65 in 2018.
So we were.
But isn't the other side of what you're talking about, and I agree with you on underestimating or revenues to be safe, is if you're actually making cuts, knowing that that historically you're gonna get more revenue than.
Agreed. Oh,
I
no,
don't know where the balance is.
There's a balance.
Generally,
Because
that's
we
the
built
basic.
that, we baked it in all
that's
along.
their deal.
I don't know where it is either.
Could somebody, and I should know this, what else is in the retail sales, the use tax piece? Because I know what we get in sale, we must get some use tax. Because we, you know, the number that we have for last year is significantly higher than what we budget for sales tax receipts. So there's obviously another component, the use tax. I mean, I know sales and use, but when are those coming in? Do those come in monthly? So why do we not, I know it says we budgeted, because I can tell you, we did not budget 2.2 million in the sales tax line. we budgeted, I think, 1.5 or 1.
I think so.
Are you looking at this?
I'm looking at this.
Yeah, that's right. That's what you're looking at.
And I've seen this before, is that when it's like it's picking up a number that it's not like it's new revenue. I want to understand for myself.
It lumps it all together.
Because it's obviously coming as two things that are, because I know sales and use tax is together, but somehow in our budget, historically, we have not, because we used to budget, like, sales tax was like 600,000. And then we raised it to 7, and then we raised it to 8, and then I think we've been, because it's been steadily going up, and it's, I think we were about 1.5 last year is what we budgeted, not 2.2. So it's getting the rest of it from somewhere else. And when we've run these before, it's not like it went from 1.2 to 2.2. It always was a higher number, and I just was trying to understand.
Trying to break these down even.
So I ran this report specifically at this base sub level. I can run the report and get in the weeds of each base sub and go down into the objects. And it will tell you what makes up that.
Well, the only reason I need to know is my point of reference is a different number that was not including that. So I don't know if this number, the composite, is higher or lower than what my expectations were or not, because I don't know what.
What did you think you budgeted for sales tax?
About 1.5.
So if you look in the general fund sales tax, it's 1.6.
Okay.
So, but that's account 31311.
Okay.
So there's probably some other 313 whatever possibly, because she's pulling everything that's 313XX. So I'd have to go through all the budget and figure out what the other pieces are.
Right.
So your number's close. I'm looking at a.
Okay, so my memory, I'm not crazy.
1.6.
Never say that.
Okay.
What is our sales tax numbers done in the last year and a half with COVID and Amazon? I think everybody's
They're
on
higher.
Amazon crazy. Has it went up 20%, 40%,
That
10%?
I would have to, we did some studies on that during the end of 2020, but I don't remember, I could go pull that.
It's just
No, that's
it's not something I need. I was just curious.
Well, if you brought it up, what?
I should clarify, we
Yeah,
never say
yeah.
you're crazy. We'd never see your numbers. Right. The record to show. Right. 45 days before the budget.
No. It's just later when we're talking about revenues, I know, because I know just like we charge 0.5 cent and it generates $1 million, so $0.50 in general fund sales.
Around that.
So
Surprised me when you said that.
yeah, so that's, so you could say, oh, well, that's $300,000. Yeah, $300,000 per 0.1% is what you would expect if you were going to adjust that number. But I need to know, is that actually, or would that number affect the 2.2? Is it everything? I don't know. That's all.
Good question. You may want to do something incremental.
Well, and where is the rest of where I would be curious where you were talking about those other, what are those? That's the general fund sales tax. What other sales tax is there?
Looks like they're looking.
Yeah, just put that on the list, the parking
Where
lot
the
list.
sales tax.
Yeah, because I've seen this before and I never understood. I only work with the part that we work with, which is that 1.5, 1.6 is what we budgeted.
And I think one of the things Commissioner Anderson asked for that I think Jen and Greg have been talking to is trying to pull those airplane sales out over.
Right.
So
because they're in that number.
Right. And I suspect it's like this too.
Right. It is. Although I think we did for 20, I think we tried to pull those out. We didn't anticipate that revenue. We didn't count it. We pulled what we knew to be airplanes out of the total. And then we used that amended number, or that adjusted number, to make our projections for the next year. Because we always figured those are just bonuses.
Just in case the airplane stopped.
Yeah, which they did.
Yeah.
So, which was good.
Did we, Greg?
We had one.
I want to say there was one early on. Somewhere.
Yeah, right when we got our first plane, and then when they grounded the planes, they grounded all the planes. Although we got, yeah, it was in February we got, so we were,
Is that this year so far? Or
no, I believe there is one. I think we've had
one
one.
this year?
I wanted to give a little bit of clarification. We pulled our, what we actually did in 19, what is going into non-departmental. And there was actually $206,406. So all of that did not go into
No, there's timber tax revenue throughout multiple departments.
We definitely, I think, can up that
Probably
budgeted
so.
amount maybe to 200,000. That's more realistic than what we're getting in that fund.
Into that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I think we've been living over in the weeds here a little bit.
What?
Said it's always good when we just find money.
Well, and that's what I was doing in the break, was going through the last few years and highlighting to dive down into unbudgeted revenues.
Yes, but you need to take a lunch during your break.
I was eating.
Eat as we were.
While she was on a kind of meeting.
Yeah, the kind of meeting at the same time.
That must have been a riveting meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I could hear the shock in Brenda's voice.
Well, it would have been nice to have that earlier, so then I wouldn't have the shock. That's all. It's all good.
It's always a shock with Kane.
Was this a meeting with Kayenta or a
No,
county Kayenta?
Just us.
506 patches we had to apply to it.
Yeah.
Seems like a staggering amount to me, but
That is a staggering number.
it's
My shock was going back to July of 20, but I guess they cut it off when we started
an
testing.
upgrade.
Um,
Yeah,
We have to go back and catch
Go
up.
back, catch up.
Yeah, I wasn't deeply involved with the testing. I know, whatever.
Okay,
Be good.
let's move on.
The rough crowd.
That was the main point I was coming in here with, that I would be diving into those unbudgeted revenues, seeing where that led me and what that dollar amount would be as a whole. I mean, obviously timber taxes, that's a pretty big variance.
I mean, as Greg reported in his
I mean, that's
report,
almost $500,000.
there's not a lot of levers, big levers when it comes to revenue. There's fees where you maybe find 100,000, or you can raise something, or adjust a fee, 10,000 here, 20, but no big significant leather, and none of them are fairly quick, other than maybe sales tax, which is still a quarter out. Whatever you-
And I think too, you go back and you look at I think we've been conservative with game land pills because that's budgeted by the state. So I mean, could go away at any point in time.
It has.
I'm not saying it will, but that's
Sometimes we only get half because they just were. I've always told them, I don't get the option of I think I'll just pay half my taxes this year.
Right. And
Thank you.
we still don't know the impact. I don't think we do. Maybe that came out of the legislative session, the impact of where the state may not fund something they've traditionally funded because now they think we've got money from other sources. I mean, there's always that unknown coming down the road as well.
Yeah. I think that will be more of an issue in the next biennium as far as I think in this, it was so. It's really hard to make any projections based on this, the current biennium because it was crazy with COVID and both access and then there's so much money. But I think when the dust settles, I'm very worried about state shared revenues going into the future because it's in their head now. They're like, oh, you've got all this money from, the feds or whoever. These things that we have traditionally funded that we don't have to, they're not mandated to, we're not going to share anymore. We're going to keep it and we're going to use it on something we want to spend it on. So I think that will be a problem, but. All right.
Anything else about revenue that you wanted to
No,
discuss
unless
further?
we're going to just dig into a discussion, but whatever.
Well, that's kind of all we had in terms of revenue, because we still, I know Jen and Greg talked about what came out of the Tuesday, Greg's report, and which followed the finance committee meeting about digging in, and Greg's outlined a form to what are the levers and what's the time frame and how much could you raise that he brought forward to you that we're going to try and populate.
Brought forward in context of what we're putting together. and
That's right,
and,
yeah.
We wouldn't, I mean, there
Takes a while.
Right,
It's gonna take a long
we
time.
weren't
It's
right
gonna
expecting
take some
that necessarily.
And I guess, the other part is that as we're going through and setting a budget, and I think Jen's scenarios are great in trying to figure that out. It's just until you get to the point as we start looking like how much is our taxes going to go up? I mean, we're going to get a % or two, but property taxes are not really going to go up significantly. Sales tax is kind of a bogey here and there because it can go crazy, but we do know that we have a payment back to the PUD for something. And again, I'm not saying it's huge, but those are still numbers that are out there.
Gain 100, lose 100.
Yeah, we gain, you might get a plane. But as you go through and look at some of these amounts, it's like, okay, where are we? I think we're going to be fairly stagnant with our revenue piece, because if we find some, we lose some. I mean, like we've got these unbudgeted ones that Jen and I were talking about, but then we had tax title and title, the revenues that came in that we just, for the timber sale.
Right.
So that kind of maybe filled in those holes.
Right.
So I think we're going to maybe get it more correctly allocated per se, but not that I don't think the numbers.
Yeah, I'm not expecting, because like all of this stuff, it still shows up in the bottom line, and whether we budgeted for it or not, it would have ended up in the, stuff that goes to the general fund, it would have ended up in the cash balance of the general fund. And as we know, the balance has gone down.
Right.
And so I don't need to really even know what's going on, except, well, I had this and now I have this. And unless I'm going to change something, there's no reason to believe that that trend is not going to continue. And so, that's why I'm a little, that's why I know that people aren't going to like it, but at least getting people started talking about the 3% reduction off of actual expenditures, not from the budget, because we've already built in, like we're already taking the savings that we get every year, and we built that we baked that in as far as unfunded, unspent dollars.
So here's a question from a revenue perspective. And, as we talk about some of these one-time hits, and we always have them, but let's take a plane, for example, and let's say that's not going to go away tomorrow.
Right.
Does it make sense to take that number out instead of putting it into the main line of sales tax, to take that piece out, put it into the same account, create another account with an unanticipated bump, so that you can see what those are? Because sometimes when you're trying to put them in there and level-wise all this stuff, we can, like Jen and I, we can go find these planes. We're going to have to go sift through all the stuff that comes from the State Department of Revenue instead of saying, oh, here's a plane right here. We know that these are there and we have them separated out, because you said you took the planes out of the revenue, but how, I don't know, I'm just throwing.
Because, is it easy to do it at the end, as they're coming in, so that,
Well, when they come in.
like when you get your monthly payment and
It's $1 million higher.
well, and that's what keyed it before, where it's like, wow, what's that?
Yeah, or it's $1 million less and you're like, oh, or $500,000 less, and you're like, oh, we had to pay a solar.
We had to pay a solar, and that's how
those
those
happened. At
happen.
the very beginning, before we could get them onto a cycle where we were looking at
Right.
that stuff.
Because I would favor, because when I said we pulled them out before, that was in the first year where we got like 2 planes, and that's what triggered it. Was we had a 1 month payment that was $250,000 more than we were anticipating, and it's like, what's going on? And it's like, oh, it's a plane. And then another month, and then the next month, it's $200,000 more than it should be. Oh, it was another plane. And so when we, at the end of the year, rather than say, wow, we usually budget 1.2 million for sales tax and we made 2 million, we said, no, pull the planes out of it. And for next year, we're going to plan on without the planes, and those are extra. Is it easy to do? Do we actually have to physically move? You're not talking about not physically, but move the money out of that line item, or is it just a budget?
I would just have 2 line items. So like right now, when I do sales tax, I have 2 line items. One to general fund sales tax and one to 626 for the reserve amount. I would have 3 lines.
You would have 3 lines. One would
And
be
one of them would
airplane.
maybe be 0.
Right.
And, you know, I mean, it probably would be 0, or, and if there was some other new airplane, it could, because it doesn't, I mean, I just would say unexpected sales tax would almost be the number.
Yeah,
So
not
you can-
airplane.
You know, so you could,
Incorporate the refunds into that same line?
No, that's the other line that's already there. The one for the solar.
Or like the
for
solar
wind.
rebates and.
He's already got a line set up for the
right,
reserve.
so if I get $100,000 a month, or $100,000 of sales tax, and I do my calculations on my codes, and it says 10,000 of that is for solar, then I take 10,000 and put it to 626.
And the other
And
90 goes into.
there,
Right.
instead of putting it in and taking it out and so on and so forth.
Okay.
It's hard for Jake to remember, sure.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Get on up here.
But Greg's coming up here. I have a process question
Okay.
that maybe down the weeds. The departments are used to doing the budget presentations in October, and I think every Thursday in October is scheduled for presentations, not all day, some cases maybe all day. And a lot of those are based on 10, I think, 10
Right.
minutes.
We're going to change that.
Should the departments expect that maybe those presentations start earlier, like in September?
No, we are starting in September.
Okay.
So yes, the answer is yes.
I know you
Same
booked,
thing, you're
I
going,
know
what
you
are we
booked
doing in
September. I
September?
mean, I know you
Those are
booked
waiting
September,
until
but they're not
October.
used to presenting in September, I don't think, are they?
No, they're not.
So that's my point. The departments have to be prepared earlier than they
Gotcha,
normally.
gotcha.
That you blocked the time out, but they haven't, because they're just thinking October is their window.
Have they received a timeline yet from?
No, but I thought before that we surprised, what, September, I'm on vacation in
Right.
September.
I see Jake has unmuted himself.
I'm just muted. I use my phone for the mute,
Oh.
so I've been unmuted for a while.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure you weren't.
So there is the potential that the departments would start their presentations earlier than typical, earlier than October, the Thursdays in October.
Oh, yeah, it'll be September.
Okay, so we should build that into our proposed schedule for the department.
Yeah, because it's going to take longer. I think everybody, so it's just, it's going to take longer to get through. And so we have to start earlier because we're still, the end stop is still the same. So,
It's not realistic to do it on Tuesday because your days
Oh,
are pretty much booked all the way up now, so.
although we may have some openings between 1 and 1:30 that are filled.
That's where we're gonna put that down.
Oh, that's right.
That's where
That's
we're
our new
going.
fundraiser.
Heather's always thinking.
Yeah, always.
Always
I still think anybody that would have set that up during community days, man, they would have 10 grand easy.
You're gonna set that dunk tank up next to the margarita machine?
Or maybe we can
Solid
combine the two.
Combine the two. Yeah, you can
Yeah,
dunk
you
me
can
into a
fill-
margarita.
Fill the dunk tank full of margarita, I'll sit in it all day.
Okay.
We
Let's
digress.
continue.
We digress.
Into the weeds we went.
Into the weeds. We keep
The
going. and
process
coming
is
back.
important because the
So it's
department's
1 o'clock,
building.
it's time for public comment.
Yeah, no, not on Thursdays. That's good. Now everybody can see each other.
There are no members of the public present.
Who's Randy, by the way?
Randy Heinzen is Jeff King's assistant.
Knew I knew the name, I'm just like, I didn't know where.
Okay, continue.
And back to my comment about the revenues. We do have some we know that are going down. And like I said, that's the one where we know we're gonna lose investment interest for sure. So as we go through and levelize them out, look for the ones that are up.
In terms of property tax, so does it only always go by the 1% to the 50? I mean,
In new
that's generally, it's
construction.
limited to that, so you just know it's not gonna go,
It's gonna go up maybe 1% and some change.
so.
So we get new construction, which is, there's a lot going on.
Right.
And we can kind of, that is one thing I look at Lynn gives us monthly permit numbers as far as and what I look at is not just the number, but it's the value. Because that drives, because that's new construction that's going on there. And we can have, like we had this is gonna be another big year because I'm assuming it's the solar project. And so there's because they had to get a permit and so that got rolled in. It won't happen this year because there's a lag.
Right.
There's more of a lag on big projects like that than there would be like a new home construction. Like stuff that was started in January might actually get on the tax rolls Solar farm, no, it's at least a year out.
They don't have to be done by July to be on the
I
tax
think
roll?
it is to
So
get,
the construction would be whatever it is, whatever it is. It's
so
not-
you could, as far as, if you were gonna project, I mean, if we were gonna look, but there's been nothing that's outside the norm. We'd have to look at last year's permits to see what was gonna roll onto the tax roll this year. I don't think there's anything big on there. I think so I think this year, and we usually, when it's all the dust settles, I figure 1% the property tax, and at best 1% for new construction. So the most you can ever look to get is about 2%. And so for the general fund at 4.6, I think about 4.6, that's $90,000. So we're going to see $90,000 of new property tax revenue into the general fund. So
But it's
decide
not-
if is it coffee or donuts
Right.
that we want.
But it wouldn't find enough. Though.
Yeah, I mean, it is, it is $90,000.
That's one full-time employee.
Yeah.
Great.
Greg, do you have any idea on interest rates going up this year and what that might do to investment interest, or are we?
So that's a good question. And this is one of the things of no, I don't. I think it's going to stay at 6 basis points for sure through the night. That would be my recommendation, that we are going to stay flat. But I did bring this up, and this is one of the things that we have the opportunity to do is we can become a pooling county where we can create a pool. We are very liquid in investing in the LGIP. But again, we are investing, I'm investing, for example, the portfolio right now is about 120 million, but that's not all county money. That is all for school districts and PUD and everything else. So one of the things that I have been reaching out to some folks and trying to put some ideas to is the reason the rate right now is 6 basis points or 7 basis points is because it's liquidity. So we're invested in a very liquid investment, which is the state pool. Like we could go in and pull out 10 million tomorrow. It's not, it's very liquid. So one of the things we could do is we could start a pool. And this is one of the things that I've worked with. We've had to do there's been some accounting rules coming down the pipe from the state auditor's office on cash counties and investments. And we're almost to the point where our criteria, we've always said, oh, we're not a pooling county. So we had a lot less to do. Well, now they've raised that to the point where it's almost as if it's almost the same. And so when I say a pooling county, what that would mean is we would then become our own pool. So we would use the LGIP as an investment tool, but we could buy longer term investments. And there's a very specific high criteria. You can't go buy junk bonds. I mean, it's a high end stuff. But we could maybe buy a 12-month investment and it might be at 14 basis points. Well, that's still not a lot, but that's double what you were at.
Better than nothing if you knew you weren't gonna need that.
Well, really, if I'm investing 130 million, honestly, how much of the 130 million am I gonna need tomorrow?
Right.
Yeah.
And
Almost
so
none.
if we ladder those out over the course of time, but the thing is, this is the caveat, is that would then not go into the current expense fund. It would go into the fund because then that's the state auditor's requirements for reporting is the money goes back to the fund where it's allocated to. But what we would be doing is we would have to invest the road fund to the road fund. They would get the revenue for that. It would go, so instead of all of the residual cash being invested into the current expense, but if we could double our investment, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I need to put some, and I've started
Do
looking
you
at
run some
this.
just like scenario and just?
I've
see
looked
what
at other
we do?
pools in other counties to see where they're at. But we would have to do a lot of accounting and a lot of pieces. But I think there's other things that I think we need to look at. When I became treasurer in 2015, the rates were at 20 basis points or thereabouts. They went up to 2.5% and they'd come back down, and they only lived at 2.5% for maybe, or even above 1.5% for a year or so. It wasn't like over the 8 years I've been here, we've all been at it's been more at this level than it ever has been at a higher level. And one of the theories was all the reporting, kind of like grant stuff, you need to be prepared for the pool you're ready to jump into. And are you going to add a bunch of expense and not be able to get it back? But I think where interest rates are, I personally, I don't see how they cannot keep messing with interest rates, because if you do have inflation numbers, how they're not, but that's just what everybody says, is nobody's expecting them to go up. At least through 2022. I mean, it doesn't mean that in 2023, but I know the last thing I saw from the Fed is they saw a year out to be, maybe it's going
Eventually,
to.
they're gonna have to come into reality, and
I would agree with you. And the problem is that that's what we're getting on the investment. But if you go get a short-term loan, or if you go to a bank or drive by banks or whatever, they're like, or look on the internet and want to get a car loan or something, there's 5 to 6%. So, I mean, where's the consumer piece and the investment piece, and how are all the things gonna, how is this housing situation gonna impact all of that? Those are all big things. So I was looking at the revenue for investment, and I'm like, I don't think we're gonna be able to, we're gonna have to cut that significantly, like $200,000.
Complicated to set up. a pool.
Yes, it's very complicated, and it would be possibly, and yes, it's a lot of administrative work, not a lot, but it's just more.
So each district would have to agree.
No, yes, they would have to either buy into the pool or they would buy into the LGIP. But but then we'd have to go out and work with the school districts, the PUDs, and this bank thing has been a challenge in and of itself, just working with the 9 school districts and the hospital and So we would have to go out and get them to kind of see, but we might be able to, and that's one of the other pieces, is we're getting the road fund hasn't been invested since I've been here. And so that money goes into the general current expense, which is nor here nor there, but then that would have to just be invested, and then the revenue, the expense would have to come back into there.
Right.
But if we could, get a rate.
Well, that's to make it work.
So, right, so that's what I have been out looking at other counties, because a lot of them post their pools out in their websites. And so I just kind of seen what their pool rates have been. They're still very conservative. They're not buying anything, and they're still under a 1.25 year maturity. So like they have maybe something that goes for a year, and then in 3 months they buy another year mature, so that they're laddering all these things out. So they're constantly coming due for diverse, for keeping it square. So, and that way then you're always kind of uninvesting and reinvesting at the current market. So if it's going up, because some of them had a weighted average cost of capital of a negative when the rates were going up. And a lot of treasurers were trying to explain that to their commissioners, because their commissioners were negative, but then they had to go back to the old and say, but see, we were positive and we were making this much more when the rates were really, really low. Right. So it is a blended kind of a thing. And it's something that you do for the long term, not for the short, we don't do it for a short-term fix, but that is one thing that I have been looking at. I haven't spent a ton of time on it with some of the other things that we've been working on, but it's kind of in the back of my head to go, okay, what would that mean? It would it would involve Kayenta and setting up some new, it's not just,
you're not setting up anything new.
No, well, we need new funds and stuff. So bars, codes, and funds, and we don't have a lot of funds. But the gyration we just went through with Teresa to get the investments split out. This time I told her, I'm like, I don't know what the worth, we kind of kept moving because it was the simple. Not simple, but when you looked at all the balance of, I think it was fair. Now it's like, we had to go through and split out the non-county investments and the interest, and it was quite a project.
Okay.
do we have
So,
any kind of a
Was that
ballpark?
a good answer?
No, that was a great answer. It covered exactly where I was going.
Yeah.
We've heard Kayenta about 12 times today. Do we have any kind of an idea, timeline, thought process on when we might be upgrading, or?
I talked to the IT guy.
I'm not on.
Me neither.
I'm waiting to try to
No,
get
he's talking about
some,
buying a new fiscal software.
yes,
That's the one.
Greg was gonna try to get an RFP for a sample from Yakima.
Yep.
And I found out, it's already been 2 weeks ago. I thought it was just last week. It's not 2 weeks ago, but I might be able to get a sample from Kitsap County.
And I can tell you that if we use the ARP funds, we at least have to spend it by 2024. So
That's a good thing.
we're on a timeline.
There you go.
Yeah,
There's your timeline. I
Well,
will
knew it
be
was a
here.
process, but the sooner we start the process, the sooner we
we'll get
finish
out
the
there.
process.
Right, so.
Because our current system, the concern is it's
It's
gotta
like-
live
it's
to
kinda
the
like when
end
he's saying,
when we're.
I don't know Kayenta, but sounds like a nightmare, and it's like, he can either have a system that he can do this investment fairly easily, or some that's a pain in the butt. But it isn't
Well,
worth the time.
but some of it, in some fairness, would be, we would also have to purchase investment software. Like, we don't have it right now. It's maintained in a spreadsheet. So I've talked to a vendor that would actually, you know, there would be some purchases. Like, we would have to set up a new fund in the 600 funds that would be in the investment pool. I think, or 700 funds. It'd be like a new 702 or whatever. And it would be the investment pool, and that pool would be a standalone piece. But it would need to communicate with Kayenta, and that's the kicker, would be the, you know, for the two pieces. And again, you know, I mean, Kayenta,
It's like the Johnny Cash song, I built it one piece at a time. So the Kayenta is also reflects how we've used it and built
set it up.
over time. So it's easy to blame Kayenta, and there is some problems with it, but it's also years and years and years or decades of.
Because getting a new software is really a matter of
Yeah,
going through the
picking up
processes
user
we
updates.
use and really evaluating what's the best process for everybody. And I think, you know, that's been sometimes carte blanche, everybody does it the same, and that's not necessarily the best method.
So for as much work as there'll be to actually identify and pick and select and implement a new one, it'll be as much or more work on inside, looking at our processes and how we do things and making it fit the software instead of the software fitting us completely. I mean, there's always a certain amount of customizing in there. So it's a big project just on looking at the entire fiscal process, I guess, for want of a better term.
So the answer to timeline is soon.
Well, the answer to starting is hopefully sooner
Starting,
rather
As
than
soon
later.
starting is
as we
soon,
can.
but I agree, we got,
Yeah, it's banded.
everybody shares your concern.
I mean, we got the money. I mean,
We have the dollars,
theoretically,
we've already committed, you know, dollars from those, you know, that's a top priority. It's a one-time expenditure. It meets our criteria of stuff. We hopefully makes us more efficient, saves us money, and certainly will lower our.
Do things that we can't
or
do.
don't
It gives us a whole new thing to talk about.
It gives us a whole new thing to talk about.
Yeah.
Oh, poor old Kayenta. We will miss her when she's gone.
We'll have to give it a new name. Put a plaque up in the hallway.
Yes. Gone, but
Fire-
never forgotten.
Fire a brick in the soft.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah,
That's a good
yeah,
idea.
fire.
Right out here in the middle.
Right out in the middle.
Right.
In memoriam.
The only other thing I wanted to go through, and I did it the other day, and this is kind of an ad nauseum kind of thing, because again, I didn't have a whole bunch to talk about, I guess. So the items that we have on here as far as tools, and again, we talked about this in the finance committee meeting probably longer than we did. So while we're here in this discussion, having a good discussion about revenue, we have the tools to impact the revenue. We have a sales tax, which is number one, which we can check off because we all agree. There's a transportation tax that we came up with that was some kind of a tax, and I don't think we knew exactly that one. Dave brought that one up, but we needed to do some research on it. There is the property tax levy lid lift, but that is one that goes to the voters.
I would spend a lot of time
Yeah,
researching
I
that.
No, I don't think we were planning
Oh,
on it.
okay.
No, we were just putting it on here as a tool.
Right.
I mean, we were just trying to, we weren't.
Say, what are the tools even available?
We were looking at the
to us?
tools available. So that then if at some point in time, this was more of, these aren't the ones, and again, we weren't making these, this was just for you guys to have at your.
Not a prioritized list.
No,
Yes,
it's
yeah,
not. No, it was just.
No particular
simply-
order.
Alphabetical,
Yeah, no, exactly, alphabetical, yeah. To get you out of all trouble.
That's right.
Nobody's first. Criminal justice tax. I believe that Dave, you brought that one up as
Yes.
well, that there's a tax that we could do for that. There was the municipal court fees, which that kind of goes back to all fees in general. There was an EMS analysis of district charges or something like that we had talked about at one point in time. And there was an EMS tax that's based upon real estate excise that I need to go. I've done some research on my side, and I need to loop back with Mr. King, because I now need to kind of clarify his side of it to make sure we know how much to quantify that.
And actually, when we get this master list, it'll blend in with those fees, right? Because it'll just be a whole.
Sure
list of
could,
everything.
yeah,
just
that
be
would
a
be
whole-
fine, just a subset.
So everything's on one.
Is there anything else that anybody has that's a tool that we are missing? or that anybody has thought of, or in looking at things differently?
Well, I
Like
mentioned
Dan,
that,
have you
and
looked-
Gordy's looking into one, but I don't have enough detail to talk about it.
which one is it?
I don't have the right word.
Oh.
So he's researching it and we'll
So
bring
the
it forward.
Gordy plan.
Yeah, the Gordy plan, yeah.
The potential.
The potential, yeah.
I would put on there not necessarily, there would be more one time, would be sale of assets. Like surplus, because we have accumulated a pretty significant portfolio of stuff that, and again, that's not to fund ongoing
No.
things, but it would be for one. In fact, I had committed when we bought the property in White Salmon for the assisted living, we pulled that money out of, and we had said at the time, we pulled money out of the reserves to do it, that one of the, was that we want to look at, you know, putting that money back from the sale of some other, because now we've acquired more property that we should be looking at. And I think we need to take a pretty comprehensive look across, because some of it we've had forever, some of it we've acquired. You know, we've gotten rid of the stuff that was, you know, tax foreclosure.
Yeah, tax time, we did, I will
You
say
got-
that has been a huge plus, and that's been kind of nice, because it gets it off, we get a little bit of money back from it. And it's also gonna generate taxes, so we'll be able to send them a tax statement. Obviously, we sent them a tax statement upon it going back into the regular, but then it will be an annual thing to try to help out. And then like some of them, if they got a building put on them,
Yeah,
then that's
then-
even gonna be better.
Right, that's all part of that new construction.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think that is true. Where do you see that list coming from? Is that a Gordy thing?
I think
or
it's
is
probably
that
a Gordy list, because most of them, you know, because we used to have the report that was that was the same one we talked about before, where it showed, the Klickitat mill site would have been on that
Right.
list, but now it's like, oh, that has a big asterisk.
And that
by it.
one I have on my list of things to get some reports on.
We always
So,
assumed it was just ours, and now it's not.
It kind of is. We've invested plenty into it, that's
Yes.
for sure.
Understanding that some of those some of those assets, if they're road fund assets, the funds are going to have to be returned to the fund.
To the road fund, yep.
Which may help, you know, that's again part of that discussion of if we're gonna, but we also divert money to the road fund from, you know, that could offset,
Right.
you know, there's all different ways. So that'd be the only other thing I can think of.
And we might be surprised, or I may be the only one surprised, when we get all of the fees and user fees, and fees for service in one list to see the total. It might
Might be a significant
People
lever.
think about it in 27 different buckets, but when you put it all together as a number, it might be,
A percent or two.
Right.
yeah, potentially.
Rounding numbers are good. I mean, you gotta have.
Like I said, it's
Yeah,
all
little
low hanging
little makes
fruit,
the
but
big.
That's right.
low hanging
Absolutely.
fruit can add up.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially as a overall number, we're not actually looking for that big of a number.
Right.
You know, that goes back to that, we have money. It's just the deltas are, you know, they're apart from each other. We got to close that. And that's just a little bit at a time.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's part of that transitional.
that transition.
Yeah. And some of them, departments, it may take them all of 2022 to actually look into it, research it. Some fees have to, I suspect they all have to be approved by the board, but there may be other processes that are associated with some of them that all lengthier processes. And PA's office and, you know, so they could be working on it.
The only other one I can think of off the top of my head is there is a mental health sales tax. That's another tool. The only reason I bring it up is that if there's things that we're funding that we're not, you know, that we're funding towards that we're using general purpose dollars, maybe it's an offset.
So that's one of the things that I think in
Some
areas.
things have non-supplant language built into them.
Well, and that's one of the things, you know, as you look at the dollars, the 138 fund that we set up, is that the other health fund? That really, I don't believe I think that we've outsourced some of that to Skamania. And so there's mental health or whatever that bucket is that does still have money into it. And that would be a question. And again, I'm not trying to go over the health department. I'm sure Aaron has thoughts, but you know, if that qualified for anything, because right now it's currently just sitting, you know,
Right.
the other
Could
thing to
it
look
be
at would be what
repurposed?
funds just are sitting there where they've been that way. Like, for a long time, I didn't understand that timber reserve fund. I was like, gosh, this just, but it's clearly defined in there that says you have to set this, they give you the number you have to have in reserve, boom, 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 boom. So those are dollars that are sitting there that will, you know, we continue to look at them every year, and you fund the reserve first, and then you go through all their phase 1, 2, and 3s. So once they're funded, but like there's other funds that are just sitting there because we've made decisions to other things with the money. So is there ways to use any of that?
So how did you say it's a mental health sales tax?
Yeah,
How does
it's
that
another,
work?
it's another thing. And some of it, I think there is a councilmatic portion and there is a voter approved portion.
So a portion of that goes.
The
to-
portion of it, the board could decide to do it and then, yeah, but it has specific strings on it. Like right now, our sales tax is the general sales tax. It has no strings. We don't
Right.
have all these other things, but quite often what we're doing, what other folks aren't doing is that we're funding all these other things with our general purpose money. And there might be a way to
Yeah.
decouple
Gotcha.
that, because it's like, I need this money for this, but so I can free up some of that I'm giving to you. If we pay for it out of this other restrict, it will go, because it has to go to that fund.
Yeah.
I'm not, again, these are just tools. I'm not,
No,
it's we're just brainstorming.
I think it's kind of like the fees list. There needs
Yeah.
to be a list of them in one place
Right.
because, you know, and we can all learn from them, because since I've been here, I've never had to look at the tool list. I mean, we know that it exists, but we've never gone and said, okay, we're gonna do this. Until Brenda looked it up, I didn't know it was 90 days to go through and do the
The sales
tax. You know, I know there's pieces to it. So,
I thought I'd heard that, so I thought I'd look it up.
Yeah.
We were having our meeting.
I don't have as good a luck
Is
finding
there
what I
can
want on
you,
the
when
DOR website.
when we're doing a little research, not that I'm just, it's just us here. Because I've thought about when, although they'll probably exempt it all, say they were gonna build pump storage. That's gonna be this huge capital project. Is there anything that says you can't put you raise your sales tax and it has a sunset and then it goes back down? Because if they're gonna buy $1 billion worth of stuff that they gotta pay sales tax on, that's a huge number to us.
Yeah.
And then it just goes away where we're almost targeting the project. And then when the project is done and constructed, the tax rate goes back down.
I know in Oregon, the lodging taxes, they sunset them. They do that for.
So I've
major
asked that on
events.
the assessor side and haven't got.
The answer. So I don't know if sales taxes, to my knowledge, nobody's ever adjusted them down. I assume it's possible.
Sales
Like
tax
you
wouldn't
could
be
raise
on the
them, can you
assessor side.
put them back when you want to? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think anybody's
It's
ever
got a
done
flow
it.
valve on it. It only goes
It
one
only
way.
goes one way.
That might
Go
be-
back down.
that might be a PA question.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sunsetting.
That would be, can you sunset the tax? Because that would be a lot more palatable. Like if there's a project's gonna go, you're like, yeah, we're gonna raise our sales tax during the construction period. And then once they're done with it, it will sunset and go back down to the regular tax rate.
Would you have to keep it up there for the entire 4 years of the build?
Yeah, to collect, because
If you were
the
trying to
taxes,
collect the
you
whole
would.
thing, because
Max-
it's open to
Yeah, to
all-
maximize.
You'd hate to burn the guy in the beginning
Right.
of the project versus the guy at the
Right.
very end.
Center's
No,
nobody-
burn 'em all.
Center's nobody else. It's always the come back down that makes people nervous.
Well, once
Is it going to?
The
come
sunset.
back?
once you stayed up that high, nobody ever lowers it.
Well, that's what I said, but you could, that's what I want to know. Could you write it in? So if you did it and you're anticipating a 4-year build where you literally say, this is a tax from now until here, and unless we take some affirmative action,
Yeah.
it will go away in 4 years,
So you'd have to do something to countermand your original.
Right.
Yeah.
which some board could do. But I always say that there's nothing we do today that a future us can not undo.
So if it brings any consolation to the new commissioners, like the 90-day thing in sales tax, we're learning things
Yeah.
too. All of us are learning things too as we go through this. So
That's why this is a good process.
What's 1% of $1 billion is
Mm,
a lot.
yes, it is.
unless the legislature just exempts them from everything. And we get our billion, we get our 1%, but Greg's got to park it over here because they're just going to give it back.
Or like the Denver, they take theirs off.
Theirs off,
yes.
Yeah, but the other word
We
we have
trust
to worry
everybody.
about, like pump storage sales taxes, how much of that are they exempt from?
Right.
That we're gonna collect extra and have to pay it back to them anyway.
Well, that's what I said.
So we
Greg's
really
gonna be-
just punish the citizens,
Yeah.
because
They're going to pay the
anyway.
higher
Right.
during that period too.
I'm not sure how
So
much
that's all.
capital reinvestment you do in a pump storage, like wind farm, they do wear out, but I don't know how much in a pump storage, other than the generator, but the Dallas Dam's still working on the same ones they had.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've probably been rebuilt a few times, but
Yeah.
they're piece at a time.
Yeah, but they,
Yeah.
you know, that's back when they really built
They
stuff.
do it.
Yes. You don't pull it out and replace it with
No.
something. No.
Okay.
So I think we're gonna have ultimately all get a good picture, at least on the revenue side, because expense you're gonna get. On the revenue side, maybe, all in front of you, so you can see all of it, or much of it at the same time when we get this all.
So can we kind of prioritize these a little bit as far as, because we put a lot of stuff out there.
Jen would appreciate.
Like I think Jen, I think we probably understood, we were listing in no particular
Are we
order, but,
talking
like the
about
property,
the tools?
the
Yeah.
tools.
Okay.
Because like we've said, the property tax levy lid lift,
Do you want that to be the bottom?
probably not something.
Right. It was more also, I think we need to put on there the timeline, because that's also
That's
something,
another
because
long.
a part of it is time to implement an amount.
Right.
So the amount obviously would be unknown. It would be determined on what the person wanted. But I think also to know how far, what tools do you have that are available to you short-term, and what tools do you have available to you long-term? So that would be it. But yes, that's.
I don't know if this is
bottom.
what you're talking about, but you just mentioned potentially 1% plus for the increase to property taxes. And if we can look historically at the new construction, you might be able to estimate it. So you wouldn't raise the tax levy, but we could estimate we're gonna get $100,000 new dollars from it in another column. And even though you don't have to do anything to get it necessarily, we know there's probably gonna be some money coming through just because in the current tax levy, correct? So I mean, it's not raising the tax levy, but it's. just
But I
that
think we
we're probably
already
gonna get 1%.
anticipate that in our current budget.
Build that in automatically. Okay. So that's the status quo.
Because we don't have to, but it's
Gotcha.
because we actually don't have to take the 1% if we don't want to, but we've always.
Gotcha.
bank
And I think when I bring, because the tax,
is on
the
yours.
property tax is on my revenue deal.
Right.
And so when I bring it in, I mean, I bring it in as here's what I think the number is gonna be, but it's more of a matter of waiting for if you guys are gonna take, or, well, Kristen also going through the process, if the board says we're not gonna
Because
take. the
Kristen
1%,
develops the new construction number.
and she kind of figures out where we think we're gonna end up at, but
Right.
then that's all brought back to the board to say,
By Jan in November.
or, yeah, to the, yeah.
Right,
it's all
generally
back for the
that
resolution.
preliminary,
So that
if you
number's-
look in the past, it says 1.1, I mean, it's already built in.
Not that I want to go on September 1st, but I'm saying if I was the first person, I would put a number in there.
Gotcha.
And then knowing that that number is going to be fluid or possibly changed by the December 15th day that we do that. But we have to remember that when we're setting these budgets and trying to get this thing shoved to zero. Because if we, we got to know which numbers are, some are really firm and some aren't.
Yes.
Okay,
Sorry, I
so,
interrupted the flow.
no, you're fine. Property tax levy lift bottom.
Right.
Okay.
For me, it's not, I mean, as far as like it's easiest to understand is the sales tax piece, including because that's the general half, because there's a criminal justice sales. You can look, and I think Wasac did a really good analysis a couple of years ago. We could probably get, because they did a across all the counties as far as because when they went to the legislature to ask for help fiscally, they wanted to have a picture of, because the legislature's like, we gave you all these tools. Why aren't you using? It's like you gave us taxing authority is what you gave us. And here's what they all are, and here's who's using them and what they're doing. So all that data has already been done, which ours is nothing. We didn't use, because there's all of these tools, and Klickitat County, there's one check, which is.
Wasac, who might be the person to ask that? Is it just go to the director, or is there somebody Wasac?
We had they've had the
Turnover.
We've had turnover, but the general counsel, they've all turned over. I knew them all, but same with the finance person, their finance head would have the numbers. But we did this, I want to say 2 years ago, so it'd be a little out of date. But that way, that's basically, they've done all the work on all the tools. They've already done all the work for us. We would have to plug our own numbers into the formulas to come up with what's available. But they did a pretty in-depth analysis of what was available, because they kind of kicked us out of when they were presenting to the legislature, because they were like, we don't want you in here because you're like, well, what are they doing? You obviously you don't have to have all these tools, because look, here's Klickitat. And so we were not included in
the wrong date for the
They told you.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Next week.
Do you want me to
was there.
testify? No,
No.
we don't wait to testify in front of the legislature.
Matter of fact, let's go to one step.
Yeah,
You don't have to
right.
be on
You don't have to be on there.
Okay,
You know.
so I have those, I kind of have a group of A's, which is transportation tax, criminal tax, and the mental health.
But yeah, Eric actually would be, I just start with Eric. Eric has a memory for absolutely everything.
So Jake and Dan, is that list so far kind of what you're thinking? Is one of-
Yeah.
And then B's I have maybe as like EMS and EMS tax, or do you want EMS tax to be an A? I'm kind of grouping them into A's, B's, and C's.
I think that's personal choice. Me personally, I kind of want a sales tax to be the last choice.
Okay.
But that's just me.
It's the
All
easiest
these
one.
Other things are.
I'm
far
just
more
saying it's
easily-
easiest to.
Oh, right.
Right, it's easiest to
Calculate.
calculate, but the other ones are far more easy for me to sell.
Right.
Oh, well.
So.
Maybe.
So I would put down, I'm gonna put as a B group, the fees for the EMS and the municipal courts. Kind of as putting them next in the grouping as we're ranking them on here. And then Gordy's, I'll put him as a B, and surplus as a C, and property tax lift at the bottom as a C.
It's like a Z.
Yeah.
And would the municipal court actually wind up on this master list?
Yeah, it would, yeah.
It should, because we are currently getting.
And so good.
And adult probation.
Adult
The
probation.
thing that I'm kind of curious about is when you check with Wasac, if you find things on their list that we're not even thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good point.
The other thing too is that when you start looking at these, one of the items from a tax perspective is that, the weed, and I'm going to speak to the weed district a little bit specifically. So, we have always put the assessments on for the weed and state fire. And the state departments are getting worse and worse and worse about paying their portion, specifically DOT. So they've actually got a letter that says they will not pay.
Right.
And so that's one thing, as I've talked to Marty, and they're requesting information to go through and look at their rates, because I do think their rates probably are going to need to go up, so they'll be on your rate schedule. But they need to compensate for that, because they're assuming that in their total acres or whatever they're doing, but the state's saying, well, we're the state, we don't pay, we're exempt. But you're not exempt from the assessments, you're exempt from the taxes, the ad valorem taxes. So, and just like the county, we still pay, Lee pays the weed and the conservation district charge for tax title or county owned property or whichever. And so do I think the public works pays whichever ones they're in charge of. So anyway, so there are some challenges from the state as they're kind of lumping into that unfunded mandate thing of their departments of DOT, and different folks are saying, well, we're not going to pay DNR. We're not going to pay the assessment fee. And that is kind of hurting some of our districts, specifically weed.
I think there's challenges working its way through the courts. I said, if not, what's our remedy? I mean, you have you can say, well, just like anybody else.
The problem is it depends on how all those pieces are, because some of them are, I don't know. I know the part that's working through the court right now is, I believe, Klickitat County or
I think
Ellensburg or
it's
somebody is DOT and them are going
They
at
won't
it.
pay their weed, and so
Right.
they're in court right now.
Right.
I guess maybe it'll all get settled,
Mhm.
and so we'll know.
But yes.
So you're saying you don't want to be the test case?
Preferably not. It's not like we
Go
don't
get
have
a
a shortage of,
foreclose
we
on
don't
the
have a
state.
shortage of things to take care of.
I want to
So-
see that on the surplus sale.
Yeah.
Yeah, I foreclosed
Or a
on this.
weed charge,
You don't
or
want-
noxious weed
You don't want,
charge.
you don't want the nail to be the test.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I don't know.
Here's your.
Yes.
yeah, here it is.
Dave, this one we're foreclosing on for $3.19.
It's a test case.
Now, the fees on that will be $2,300.19. But yes, that is another thing that's kind of pinching us on the property tax side.
Just reminds me, I assume this state's no different than others. Cities generally have a lot more ways to raise revenue than counties, franchise fees, wastewater, they borrow money against utilities. I mean, it's just a lot of different levers that other forms of government have. The counties generally don't have that true statement.
Oh, I
Oh,
know.
yeah, actually, we have the least number of tools. And that's by design. It's not, that's the way it is. And I think we're generally the least wanting of using the tools.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So,
Well, the list of easier to hard, how much they make, and then that may not be the same list as what we want to do,
What we wanna
whether we want to do it or if we want to do it.
But at least we'll know.
Gotcha.
people know. That's why we wanted to have the tools so we can see.
Well, just a list whether you use them this year or not, at least, I mean, it's also
It'll be a
just something
multi-year
Yeah.
project.
to look at and know what's out
And
there.
I know you're talking about planning fees, might be something that 2022, 2023, or something a long-range planner takes on as a project moving forward. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done, as an example.
Okay.
Any other
And
questions?
sad news, there appears to be much more discretion in the expense side than the revenue side, or opportunity, I guess, maybe there is.
Yeah, that's 100% in our control, whether we want
That
it
was
or
a test
not.
one that we knew the answer.
Yeah.
Most of the expense side, the only people we piss off are people inside this building. The revenue side, you piss off all the other people.
Every expense is tied to a service, and every service has got a constituent.
Yeah,
So.
they're just not, they may not know they're pissed off until later. But they will be. I mean, there's things, everybody has their, as you said, is a cog in a great machine.
And they may be the only person that gets that service or cares about that service until it's gone. And that's the unintended consequence.
Yeah, like I had an interesting, in fact, I need to answer it, and I need to talk to Jeff, and it was also at a community meeting in Lyle, Tuesday night about the fire, which was good. It was excellent, got some good information and stuff. But there was there was other stuff too, which I won't talk about, but there was a question raised. There wasn't anybody there from dispatch or EMS, so we were kind of guessing, but there was folks were thinking that they were not signed up in the 911, the emergency notifications. Are like, well, I didn't get anything. And it's like, well, were you in the evacuation zone? No, I live 3 miles from it's like, it's not a general information that we send out.
That's on Facebook.
That's well, right. They did say that, the best place to get the information. But I also,
Funny today.
yeah, but I also, there is an expectation, like people are thinking
Oh, right.
that there's more, there already is more service there than there is, or they want more service. Because they said, well, I live 7 miles away from the fire. I should be getting periodic updates pushed out on the alert system. And it's like, that's not what it's for.
No.
That's Facebook is for that.
We don't have time for that.
We don't have time. It would take a full-time person to update that. And you would eventually, if you were getting a text all the time about you would stop listening to them. Like if I get one that says, go now.
Yes.
Oh,
But look at
that's why it's so dark out here.
Amber Alert, I don't really pay attention.
Yeah, exactly. Just like the Amber, I'm like, every Amber Alert in the whole state.
Or
So-
you look at it and you go, oh, Spokane.
I'd
Edmonds or where,
Yeah.
until it gets closer to home.
Closer to home.
Or if it's a silver where they see there's my license plate.
Yeah.
But that's an example of people, again, where people you think they don't care, they do. Because as you start pulling things away, they they are impacted, they just don't know it.
Well, I think that's a huge part, and I think also that everybody wants the gold-plated
just
system
don't wanna
until
pay
they
for
have
it.
to go pay for
Their
it.
plate's
And they're
different
like,
than every plate's
and they're
different.
sitting there going, well, we don't have radio reception in this one little space in the middle of wherever.
Right.
Okay, well, you go pay the money to get that. And it's like, oh, okay, or you know,
That was a
however
question
much.
about senior services, we think, well, if you do anything to impact the bus line, it'll be the seniors. Well, maybe a non-senior that's more impacted than a senior, the constituent of a potential impact. I mean, you never know who's the, and I wonder if Jeff's ever looked at, Casey and I have been in a lot of meetings about dispatch and the function, so we look at the restructure. They talk a lot about getting 10,000 calls for every fire. It just buries them trying to, we know the fire. Whereas I wonder if that alert system would actually save them time by pushing it out, saying, we know there's a fire on this road and.
Right, thank you, we're
Because they
aware.
literally have to answer every call, and during a major event like they told us out there, it can swamp them. Just telling people, yeah, I got it, yeah, I got it, yeah, I got it. So I wonder if they've ever looked at that as a way for, on a major event, to push information out to a bigger group.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Efficiency,
Yes. Anything else?
Headache.
No.
Yeah, that's kind of what I look at that, is that I just don't think people would,
Etc.
they would appreciate it for a while, but yeah, they would. Yay, go team.
I don't do that, looks like.
I don't have any other questions.
Okay, thanks, Jake. Anything else in the room? Nothing from the auditor?
We're scheduled for next Thursday.
You are beginning at 8 a.m.
So is there anything at this?
Do we what do we think we'll have to work on as far as next, do we think we'll have some stuff to dig
By
into
next
any of
Thursday.
this stuff next Thursday? By next Thursday? Because if we don't, I don't know, what are we talking about?
I don't know if a week's enough time for you guys to, like the airplane stuff and some of these other things. We won't have this master list.
I'm not here next Thursday.
Well, that's kind of what I'm
Let's just
thinking.
play
Do we
break.
want to skip next Thursday and
Was
put
I-
The following
a
Thursday?
morning and afternoon the following Thursday? Have more information.
But if you're not
More
here,
time.
I mean, I can still work with Jen or whatever before then, but
I just don't want to have a meeting to have a meeting. Like
Is your being gone meaning you're like on vacation and don't want to be working?
no, I'm going to the treasurer's conference.
Okay, well, I just didn't want to,
Oh,
I know.
sorry, slide me down,
It's
John.
like, I want to see who's the treasurers now. I mean,
yeah,
we haven't
who's
seen each other
still
for-
there?
Yeah.
But in the same regard, if we don't do this on a Thursday, I wouldn't mind potentially doing a nuisance if the prosecutor's
Yeah.
available on a
Yeah.
Thursday.
Oh, no,
I
I'm
don't
saying we
really
can
want to
fill
do
our
a nuisance
Thursday.
unless he's available. Otherwise, we're spinning our wheels.
I think probably we would need to, I think we need for sure that.
2 weeks.
Because like yesterday, we were thinking, okay, we're gonna need, a couple weeks on this thing here. And it's gonna take some time.
Okay, well, I think we should just plan on not, next Thursday, we'll defer to the following Thursday. I'll ask Lee to look at the schedule. Is there something we can fill it with some of these other things if they're available?
Well, I would have to get over with Lynn and see how that
Right.
group's going.
Whether it's nuisance or short-term rental or any of these other things we've kind of already played with.
Right, if there's something available for productive, if not.
I will try to fill you want the whole day or just.
Potable water.
Whatever somebody's, if they're ready to get working on something.
I go
If
tell
they're
them
not,
to.
If they're not,
Let me
then
go
they're not.
Let me go pull the agenda off
Okay.
and,
Oh, today is Thursday, so we've already
Yeah.
scheduled.
that's okay.
Oh, right.
But it's only
Flexible.
Thursday. We're flexible.
We're flexible.
That's that asterisk that's on.
And then we'll try to get some things going.
That's the as duties as assigned.
Well, that's.
Equivalent.
Oh, I know that one. We all know that one.
I have that one too in my
Yeah,
job.
apparently it works for up
Yeah,
and down the chain.
Up and, yeah, it does, from the citizens, absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Anything else? Before we not, back to the financials, the new financials, what do we need to do
So far as the,
to move to the next phase?
yeah,
'Cause I think we have universal, well, not universal. I can think of one or two holdouts, but near universal acceptance of it's time to move on.
right, so I can schedule a meeting in a couple of weeks. I'll see what I can get from Kitsap County. Hopefully Greg will be able to get something.
And I will do that.
I have some specific ideas on some other topics to discuss. So,
Okay, Okay.
The key, I think, though, is I think we all, the work is not gonna be just getting a new system and getting it
No.
put in. The work is gonna be trying to go through our processes and understand and make sure that when the process that we have, what's new and available, and, you know, how is this whole thing gonna work? And that is gonna be
Is
a
there,
heavy
is there
lift.
some of that that can start now, that process?
Well, it should be ongoing, always has been ongoing, but it's not.
Every office that would use the system, and that would be like the treasurer, myself, and public works, the heavy users, the public health. All those people should be looking at, oh, this is what I really would like Kayenta to do. You
Right.
know, this is what I really hate about Kayenta.
I mean, frankly, I even had Public Works tell me that their processes are paper heavy and they need to be revised and looked at. So I don't know if you have to wait to have the software to do that or do it now.
Well, I think it's paper heavy, but I also think it's a matter of sitting with them and and that's great for their process. But I think we need to also go through to the end and go, the whole goal of a financial reporting system is to put an annual report together for the state auditor by May 30th. And if anything, one thing we're doing is not helping us achieve that goal, then why are we, maybe we need to do it. But we need to have that conversation, because I think my worry is we're gonna do this and everybody's gonna, you know, I mean, it's hard to know what you can make new efficiencies for a new system when you don't know what the tool, because we gotta develop our stuff around this new software and the tools it's gonna have. Because we don't know what those are.
Versus the other way.
Yeah, we don't know that it's gonna, maybe one system lets us scan in an invoice and put it with an email, another one does different, you know what I'm saying? We don't, those are all things we want, but we don't know how to make that work.
Right.
So I think it's hard to put the cart in front of the horse on that.
Too soon for that part.
Yeah, but I think everybody's got a lot of ideas. I think if you went out and said, hey, what do you want to change? You would have, bring a wheelbarrow.
Or what do you want in the software?
Exactly.
So that you
Well,
guys
it's just
know.
like you're talking about investment software. Can we buy a system that has investment module?
Yeah,
Or is it, or do they recommend somebody that
or do I?
links
yeah.
well, plays well with it? you know,
Right,
Like time and attendance.
right.
Okay, I just want
Yeah,
to.
so, no, I went to my auditor's thing, Kitsap County was talking about, they'd just gone to Venus, and I said, hey, who do I get a hold of? And he says, send me an email and I'll send it to the right person. Well, I got back to the office and real life started happening, and
Does Canadian say anything when you guys met with them about their findings? I think Jake mentioned they were gonna bring up because they're going through the same process.
I have
They're
no
looking at
idea.
software.
Go ahead,
They're
Jake.
just starting down the process.
Oh.
They're about the same place we are, as I understand.
So maybe if they do an RFP,
But I do think that we have to remember, there is 39 counties, 39 different ways to do it. I mean, that is the one, we all are doing and operating under the same RCW, but I can tell you, in just going to a treasurer's conference, there could be 15 different ways. Everybody's got different, because if you're on accrual or you're on
But it
cash.
does seem there's only 3 or 4 major software being used by
Oh,
39
100%.
counties.
Well, all the taxing software is owned by one entity.
So.
I mean, and that's the entity that owns Kayenta. That should
Oh,
scare
gee.
you.
All right, well, if there is nothing else for the good of the order, I guess I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Unless you want to pile these people with any more work, I would make a motion to adjourn.
Second the motion.
Yeah, I have a motion, a second to adjourn our workshop meeting. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Thanks again. for your
Aye.
And Jake says aye, motion passes. We're adjourned.